Well, welcome back, everybody. It's for those of you, I'm pretty sure everybody here knows me, but I'm Jason Ledbetter. I'm the town manager for the town of Woodside. Started in May. It's been about 6.5 months. Just want to, this is the second CAC meeting, so before we officially get started, just for clarification, looks like everybody sees we do have the food available. We will have somewhat of a break at some point, but feel free at any point to get up and grab some food or any beverages that you would like to have. The microphones, if you have the short microphone, when it is in the green position, it's considered on, and so it's hot. You're all on a hot mic currently. If you have the longer microphones and they're red, they are also considered on as well. If you need any help, just please let me know. Somebody will come by. A couple points for tonight's meeting, because we only have 4 of these, and so the topics and that we're going to be discussing, hopefully we'll have some level of conclusion on some of them, and then we'll be moving on to more topics as we have more meetings. But I want to point out 2 very specific things based off of the first meeting that we had, and then my engagement over the pop-ups for the TCAP. And that is, first off, we discussed the boundary for the town center area plan, and we want to clarify to you guys that it is malleable. We don't need you to go back over that boundary, but the council wants you guys to know that ultimately along the right of way, if you see a property that for some reason you had an idea of something that would work well for town center, you're welcome to explore that opportunity of utilizing that site. You're not limited by the current boundary, but we don't need you to go back over and alter the boundary. You just need to know that if a property pops up and you're interested in some level of action for that site, it's malleable, and we ask that you please introduce that alteration. Secondly, we're doing the town center area plan update, and originally there was the 1970 version, I believe, was the first version that was done here in Woodside, but we've obligated ourselves to this item, and I want to just discuss that briefly. The reasoning is because within the housing element itself, we have told the state we will do a town center area plan update, and so it is an obligation for us to go through this process. The difference is when we did the housing element, there's obligations and mandates from the state that come down that ultimately the town, some of its members or some of its residents maybe don't like those mandates. In this instance, there's no mandate on the town center area plan update. You guys have control of what you would like to see happen, and your advice to the council ultimately is what we're seeking. And so based on that, I want to just rip open the Band-Aid on a very difficult subject, and that is the question of housing within the context of the town center area plan. And tonight we will be discussing that. And it is completely acceptable for you to not want that and voice your opinion. And it's completely acceptable if you desire to explore this, that you let us know this evening, because we only have 2 more meetings after this. And some of these topics are going to have to get fleshed out rather rapidly. So ultimately, without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Good City.
All right. Thank you, Jason. Really looking forward to another evening of robust conversation with folks here. Thanks for spending time with us tonight, and ready to have some good conversation. So just again, I'm Troy Reinhalter with Good City Company. I'm the project manager for this effort. I have with me here Ariana O'Connell. I have Kevin Gardner and Aaron Aikman from the Good City Company. As we did last time, we also have Ryan Call and Jane Lynn from Urban Field Studio. So I'll just begin with a brief overview of our agenda for tonight. As Jason mentioned, we're trying to accomplish a fair amount of things tonight. Briefly, we'll have the approval of the minutes from last meeting. We'll have the Sage and Kai present a brief clarification on some background related to the voter-approved ballot measures and the zoning regulations. I'll give a summary of what we've heard during the first round of community engagement. We had a lot of engagement activities, and we'd like to share what we heard with the group here as the context for our later discussion. Then following on the engagement, we'll talk a little bit briefly about just sort of restating the objectives and the desired outcomes for this effort. to sort of pull us all together and move in the same direction. Then we'll have the first public comment, both in person and on Zoom, moderated by Deputy Town Clerk Julie. Then we'll break for about 10 minutes. We'll then return to really the meat of the meeting, which is a discussion with this group and an interactive polling exercise where we'll be really talking through, prioritizing potential ideas and solutions for 4 key topics: public gathering spaces, transportation, mobility, parking, and land use. Then we'll conclude with a second public comment session. So just to restate what Jason put forward, there's really 3 key objectives tonight. First is to share some information with the group that were pertaining to some questions that were raised at the last meeting. Second is to, again, provide a summary and an update on what we've heard from the members of the community through our engagement. And then finally, and arguably the most important, is to really discuss these key ideas that could become items as implementation items in the updated TCAP. And this is really a first step towards preparing the draft updated plan for consideration by the community as part of our next round of engagement. So I don't think we need to dwell on this. I think last meeting we had a really civil and productive conversation, but just a reminder to be considerate of our fellow CAC members, have one of us speak at a time to share the air so everyone has an opportunity, and try to understand people that you may disagree with. Again, we'll have opportunity for discussion and opportunity for voting. So there'll be a couple of different ways to share your ideas with the group. And this is just a timeline slide to kind of show us where we have been, where we are now, and where we're going. So far, we had a first meeting with the town council. We had our first CAC meeting in August. We had a round of engagement that included survey, pop-ups, and workshop, which we'll be discussing tonight. We're at the second of the 4 CAC meetings. After this meeting, we'll have a next check-in with the town council. We'll have a third CAC meeting, and then the next round of community engagement, which will really set us up for the drafting of the updated area plan and the accompanying environmental review. All right, so as Jason mentioned, before we kind of get into the heart of the meeting, we wanted to just give a few clarifications and additional background information about some topics that we delved into at the last meeting. So just here's a map of the boundary for the area plan, but as Jason clarified, it's okay to weigh in on ideas that are outside of this boundary. Those ideas will be shared with the council. They could be included in the updated plan, or they could be a part of another related future town planning initiative. So you're not restricted from ideas that are outside of this boundary, but our focus generally will be on this boundary. All right, with that, I'll hand it over to Kai Ruiz to give a little background on the voter-adopted ballot measures.
So before Kai steps in, this is Jason once again. I just want to clarify something. So questions had been asked at the last CAC meeting about the ballot measures that were enacted over several decades ago, and whether or not these measures should constrain the visioning process that you guys are currently engaging with for the town center update. So Kai, the deputy town attorney here this evening, he's going to give you a brief explanation of those measures for historical context. I think that's really important that you guys understand the historical context. But we really want you to understand that moving forward, those measures should not be viewed as constraining your process or any recommendations that you guys would like to see happen. So it's just really important. There are constraints currently, but if you have a plan, just know that those constraints, we can work within the constraints to envision or see your plan through.
Thanks, Jason, and thank you everyone for having me here tonight. So this is the history of the world in 90 seconds or less. The town center area plan originally was conceived in 1970 as part of a general plan update, and in 1976, the town center area plan was amended and kind of split into 2 areas, Area A and Area B. Area B is where we're sitting right now. It is a parcel that used to be owned by PG&E. The town acquired that sometime in the early 1970s, I believe. And then Area A is everything you think of as the town center. So from Whiskey Hill all the way to the other side of Kenyatta Corners. In 1987, at that time, the town hall was located on the property of the elementary school district. The elementary school district needed that property back, terminated the town's lease for that site, and so the town needed to find a new location for town hall. The town council at the time put together a subcommittee that looked at two locations specifically. Area B, where we are now, and Village Hill. The subcommittee came back and recommended that Village Hill would be the location for the new town hall. In response to that recommendation, the voters brought forth two measures. First was a measure known as Save Village Hill. That measure never made it to the voters because the council at the time took the measure and adopted it. What that measure did was essentially make it so that Village Hill had to remain an open space. That remains the restriction on that area, and the effect of the council taking the voters' measure and adopting it is the same as the voters approving that measure. And so that restriction on Village Hill cannot be altered except by the voters. The second measure became known as Measure J when it made it to the ballot. That passed in November of 1988. What Measure J did was three specific things. Number one, it prohibited the three residential parcels that were located within the town center area plan from ever being used as commercial or professional uses. So they had to remain residential. Second, this site, the former PG&E site that the town had acquired, could be used under Measure J for a 5,000 square foot public building and parking and ingress and egress improvements to essentially allow for this town hall to be built here. Third, Measure J imposed for all parcels that are immediately adjacent to Woodside Road within the town center area plan, those parcels could only be developed up to 1 story. So anything right along Woodside Road restricted to 1 story. While this was all going on, the town was also considering a parking district in order to try and create parking and create some additional circulation that would alleviate some of the problems that were occurring with the lack of parking around the town center at the time. After Measure J was put into place, it became pretty clear that 2 of those 3 residential parcels that were restricted to residential use, which are what you think of as where the museum currently sits, basically. It was kind of determined that parking was not realistically going to be fixed without access to those parcels for parking purposes. So soon after Measure J was passed, forgive me, I don't remember the exact year, but soon thereafter, Measure 1 was proposed and adopted by the voters. And that allows those 2 parcels, which are at the museum site, to be developed to 50% parking, as long as the remaining 50% of those parcels remain in open space. So that's what we have today. Fast forward to 2021, Measure A was approved by the voters, and that creates 2 additional exceptions to Measure J's restrictions. Number 1, the residential parcel that is behind Kenyatta Corners can now be used for parking to facilitate outdoor dining and can also be used for trails and for play structures. Secondly, the 2 residential parcels that are closer here at the museum site that were allowed under Measure 1 to be used for half for parking. The remaining half that was supposed to remain in open space, and in fact the parking space itself, can now also be used to create a public structure promoting art, culture, and other community events. And so the thought is something along the lines of an amphitheater or a gazebo. And that's where we are now. All of these restrictions have been put in place by the voters, and so it takes another act by the voters to change any of those restrictions. But like Jason said, we are asking this process to be really a visioning process, and so we provide this all for historical context, but don't believe that you should be limited by these restrictions in any way in your discussions. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Kai, very much. We'll go next slide, and Sage will explain, the planning director will explain some of the implications from those measures that are carried forth into the zoning code.
So thank you, Troy. So as part of Measure J, the municipal code was updated, and essentially what it did is Kai mentioned that it limited the buildings fronting Woodside Road for that elevation to be held to a one-story limit, whereas the backside could be 2 stories as kind of a submerged basement. And that what it also did was clarify, and what you see on your map here is this is the areas A and B that Kai was mentioning. So this red strip along Woodside Road, what that identifies is a 100-foot buffer, essentially a 100-foot setback from the right-of-way of Woodside Road. And the municipal code was updated from Measure J to state that no building may exceed 17 feet above the edge of the paved right-of-way. So essentially where the property lines are fronting Woodside Road, wherever that distance is, you can go 17 feet taller than that. And that's the limitation that is in place today. The code was also amended to indicate that any buildings located with all or within a part of that are within 100 feet of Woodside Road in Area B can have a height limit of 21 feet above the paved surface. Although, as you note here, Area B is more than 100 feet away, so just the typical residential height limits would apply because it is in a rural residential zoning district. And that is the effect of Measure J and the height limitations. And I have nothing further to add on that.
All right, thanks, Sage. We'll pause. If anyone has any clarifying questions for staff, can feel free to raise your hand now. All right, great. Let's move along to share a little bit from what our team and staff heard through our initial round of engagement with the Woodside community. So as folks I think know, I saw many of you at these events, which was great to see. We led a series of 4 pop-ups during the fall. We were at the Village Hub, in front of Kenyatta's Corners. We were at the Day of the Horse, and at morning drop-off at the elementary school. We had an online survey that was open for almost 2 months, and we received almost 500 responses, which is really encouraging. And then we had an open house workshop again at the elementary school with over 50 participants and residents. And we really engaged in these different events, variety of events, so that we could make sure that we got to hear from a wide swath of residents and stakeholders. So in the next round, we'll be doing similarly a wide set of engagement events. So now I'll just discuss briefly what we heard from the online survey. That was sort of our broadest feedback activity. We had the most interactions and responses through the online survey. We really wanted to hear from folks about how they interact with the town center, what they like about the town center, what they like to see improved. As I said, we had almost 500 responses. Generally, there was agreement around the idea and the desire for more vitality, but without losing the character of the town center. Strong agreement and sentiment in favor of outdoor dining and seating and public events that would all help to improve the vibrancy of the town center. Interest in improved safety in terms of pedestrian crossings, traffic management. Interest in addressing like the aesthetic appeal and the maintenance of the town center, upkeep, and the general sort of visual appearance of the town center. some of the themes, and we sorted this by, residents and non-residents. The bulk of the respondents, over 80%, were residents. But just in the interest of kind of parsing out who responded, we did sort by residents versus non-residents. And some of the themes that residents in particular expressed were, the idea that the town center is really a part of the town's heritage. It's part of the quiet and charm of the town center, that we shouldn't lose that important aspect of the town center. Some skepticism towards too much development and a desire to keep the local control over what happens in the town center. Calls to preserve the small town feel, and as always, the equestrian identity that's part and parcel of Woodside. Some of the themes we heard across the board, but also from non-residents, interest in new activities, yoga, play areas, etc., ways to activate the public realm, plazas, and again, outdoor dining. Some frustration that there's not too much variety of businesses and shops in the town center at this time. Overall, the online survey, the consensus was that the town center should be a place that's safe and beautiful, that serves the community, and that has some smaller scale improvements that enhance the use of that town center. Housing was fairly mixed, was a polarizing issue. There was both favored and disfavored responses, and generally a lot of folks, their support for housing was really conditional on how that housing would be implemented. So the pop-ups, the idea of the pop-ups were sure.
Can you give us a sense of the breakdown between resident and non-resident response? In other words, are the residents the bulk of what you heard from, who you heard from? And
Yeah, sure.
second, when I've attended public hearings and study sessions here at the town, the only ones who comment are residents. The only ones who show up are residents. It's very, very rare that a non-resident shows up. Shouldn't we as a town prioritize the residents, the property owners, the business owners, the students, those who've been here a long time and those who are new here? That's sort of a general question for the whole committee. But I'm a little surprised in the slide, you give equal weighting to both, listing 3 items under each. But isn't it the residents who should get the bulk of those items? Shouldn't we express their concerns, their objectives, kind of highlight those first? It's good to hear from non-residents, but I think one idea is, tweak this slide a little bit so the residents stand out. Maybe it's 4 or 5 items instead of 3. Maybe the non-residents is 2. I'm a little bit concerned about giving them equal weighting. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks for that, Richard. Overall, and we did share as an attachment to the CAC materials, kind of a more in-depth breakdown of the survey responses. I think we have about 30 slide kind of in detailed response that breaks down each answer, each question, and it breaks out for each of those answers and questions, the resident response versus the non-resident response. So you can see clearly who felt what. I think if you look at that generally, to start with, I think about 85, north of 85% of the responses were from residents. So the bulk of the response was from residents. We did open it up to folks who might be shopping in town, passing through town. So there were some folks who took advantage of that. If they're shopping in town, they may have seen the QR code. So we did want to kind of open up. But again, the bulk of the responses were from the residents. And I think overall, you saw fairly aligned results between both groups. So I don't necessarily think that we have to hit the 2 groups against each other. I do agree that, and I think it is for this group to deliberate on, which ideas we think are more valuable. But I don't mean to suggest here that the non-residents are more important. I think we just wanted to share a sample of ideas from both groups.
Right. So there are really 2 ideas. One is to highlight that 85% of the respondents in the online were residents, 15% were non-residents. Second is give more weight to the residents, list more items, because I think that's pretty important. So I went through all the other slides and they're very comprehensive, but I'm a little worried about summaries.
Great.
Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, so now just talking a little bit about the pop-ups. We had 4 pop-ups, and we had a number of interactions at those where we got a chance to talk in depth with residents who passed us by at Kenyatta Quarters or at the Village Hub. It's more of an informal setting where we might run into people who wouldn't normally know about the project. Again, some of the similar takeaways as we heard in the survey: a lot of pride in the identity of Woodside, the rural identity, the small town identity. Again, an interest in bringing back outdoor dining, emphasizing and enhancing public gathering that was once, kind of higher in the town center that it is now. Safety, again, we heard folks put up dots on our maps at the various intersections where there's unsafe, activity, like to lower speeds and increase the safety of the crossing. Generally, there is a lot of support for more multi-use paths and continuing safe route to schools enhancements in a way that is sort of in keeping with the towns and the town center's character. Again, housing was pretty mixed. It was slightly more against housing in the pop-ups than in the survey. So there were some folks who were open to housing in a limited way if it was smaller scale. But again, housing was sort of a polarizing topic. Yeah.
In the summary, but again, are the numbers the same with residents? Can you use your microphone? Oh, sorry. Are the numbers the same in terms of people that you question, non-residents versus residents? Is it 15% non-residents for the pop-ups, or do you have numbers for this?
Yeah, so the question was, what's the breakdown of the resident versus non-resident in the pop-ups? We didn't ask folks necessarily to give us their demographic information. The intent was basically, if you're already here in town and you're passing by at Kenyatta Corners or Village Hub, then we'd like to talk to you. Just anecdotally, I think my sense was that most of the folks we talked to were residents. They were very familiar with the town center. They were very informed about the town center, but I can't say that we asked each individual there to mark down.
How many, what were the numbers? Numbers are important.
Oh, sure. Yeah, at each pop-up was about 2 hours long, and at any of those, we spoke from anywhere from like 25 to 40 to 50 people at those opportunities. I would imagine it's probably about 150.
And I'll just note that the different events attracted different folks. And so I think the Village Hub was very popular with people from in town and out of town. So some people expressed that they were, just common visitors to the town. They come here often. And then I think it's just especially noted at the Day of the Horse, where there's a tremendous number of out of town folks.
The day you
We had a pop-up, yeah, that day. And so at the pop-ups, it was just engaging people a lot of times verbally, and they would write down post-it information. And but it was interesting to note, whereas the Kenyatta Corners, there was probably a lot more residents, if not all residents. But the Day of the Horse, I think, attracted most of the non-residents.
So Troy, before we go on from the slide, I think when we come to slide 19, we should reflect back on this slide 14. I actually think 14 is your strongest slide. And when you take a look at 19, we really should come back to 14, because 14 ties in with at least what I, in my opinion, have heard from residents, property owners, people who've been here a long time, public hearings, and I've been attending them since 1990. It's really a good, solid summary. So,
Great, thanks. All right, we'll move along to what we heard from the open house, which was more of an intentional event where we held a 2-hour open house meeting workshop at the elementary school. We had a presentation and then stations where folks could move around and discuss with staff and our team. Similar feedback, a lot of emphasis on maintaining the character and the identity and limiting too much change, large scale change. Again, some fair amount of opposition to housing in the town center, interest in some new businesses. We heard ice cream stop in particular, types of things that could meet the daily needs without attracting too much traffic to the town center. Yet again, outdoor dining, highly supported by almost all participants, and some mixed views about parking, whether we need to change the parking. Some felt it was working okay, and others felt there should be some changes and some solutions there. So just to kind of touch on the themes we heard across all of these events, I mean, I think overall we heard some of the same themes expressed during all of these activities. The idea that whatever we do in this process, we should really be preserving what makes Woodside unique. The words rural, equestrian, small town came up over and over again in the survey and in the written notes on our pop-up boards. As was mentioned, outdoor dining and gathering was really universally more or less acclaimed and looked to be improved. Safety and comfort from a traffic and pedestrian bicycle standpoint. Economy, there was a lot of support for the businesses we do have, but some interest in some new businesses that could meet more daily needs. And then it got along the theme of safety, sort of more accessibility for walking in particular, while again keeping surfaces that are still more attuned to the rural character of Woodside. And just sort of looking ahead to the vision that we may build as part of this area plan. Some of the sort of themes were a town center that's more vibrant but still distinctly rural. Improvements that are sort of smaller scale or lower impact rather than large changes or redevelopments. A focus on public spaces and natural features, more in keeping with the rural character and outdoor character. Some caution and some apprehension about housing. A lot of folks looking for no change or minimal change. Some openness to smaller scale housing and if it's done in the right way. And just sort of overall, a town center that continues to reflect the heritage and the uniqueness of town, supports local businesses and sort of but unifies and brings people together in a better way than it does now. So just kind of bringing us together as part of this process, we took a look at all the engagement that we heard and we tried to summarize some of the outcomes as part of this process. So happy to hear feedback on these. But this is somewhat of a restating of what we had at the first meeting, but just wanted to kind of put this out for the group and then open it up for discussion. What we want as part of this effort is to really build the consensus around a shared vision, prioritize the local concerns over those of the visitors, maintain that treasured, unique feel of Woodside, enable the long-term success and viability of local businesses, expand the diversity of land uses in the town center to serve needs, improve the safety of movement through the town center, provide clear guidance on design and character for buildings in town center, create additional public gathering spaces, and improve the area's aesthetic appeal and condition overall. So with that, I'm happy to open it up for any thoughts or feedback kind of on that list or any further questions about the engagement. If there's anything that you feel like we missed as part of that summary and anything we should kind of add or take off of the list.
So could we go back? So I have several concerns. Number two, I think I would reword that so that it's clear that local concerns is residents. So I would actually reword that bullet point as prioritize residents over visitors. And I think that ties in with all the public hearings that I've attended here. And I would say public hearings almost everywhere. It's very rare for visitors to weigh in with thoughts, comments, concerns. So that's one idea. Third bullet point, I would say maintain the treasured rural, comma, equestrian centric, comma, small town character. So it's more than rural, it's more than small town. It's this center around the horse that I think, has been so prevalent over such a long period of time. And so many of the residential developments here are rooted around the horse. So maybe that's changing over time, but I think you'd benefit by mentioning equestrian somewhere there. I would actually delete 4 and 5. So I don't think the town as a public entity really needs to enable long-term economic success and viability of the local businesses. I think the residents will choose which business to prioritize, which ones to patronize. That'll come through in, success or failure of each business. And we've been through lots of failures. We've seen lots of tenants who've given it a good shot and failed. But that's the capitalist system. We put money at risk. They do too. And it either works or it doesn't work. I don't think the town really has that as a priority. If you want to keep it, I suggest it goes way at the bottom. I have never heard a town resident or a town property owner, item 5, I've never heard them talk about expanding diversity of land uses. That may have come through in some of the comments, but I sure haven't seen that. Not in town center. Town center is very small to begin with. It is highly developed. There's a very little left. We heard from Kai about constraints on Village Hill. We heard about Kenyatta Corners in the rear. We heard about the 2 parcels out here. Those are the only undeveloped parcels here. So there's very little to change. I mean, perhaps that's something that came through, but again, I would suggest that if you have to keep it, it goes to the bottom. I actually think improved safe movement bumps up. I think that's one of the most important items that you have here. We talked about it quite a bit during the first meeting, and I like that bullet point quite a bit. Next item, the clearer guidance on desired design and character of buildings. That may work, but for a long time, the town had an ASRB that administered a design code, and the town moved away from that for a variety of reasons. So I'm not sure that's really the right solution. I would, on the next item, I'd add a couple of words here. I'd say foster 1 or 2 additional, and I would put the word small scale community gathering places. So it doesn't come across as something big, large, perhaps without constraints. Next item's great. I think one item to add to this list that's not here that I've heard a number of times that we talked about during the first meeting that we see in the comments, and that's facilitate seasonal outdoor dining. I think that needs to be an objective. I think it's just, you hear it, you read about it in the comments in your 24 or so pages of material, and it's very prevalent. And the proof's in the pudding, right? You see people dining outdoors. It's succeeded. It's a win for the pub. It's a win for the Village Bakery and for Bucks. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. Very thoughtful. Any other thoughts or opinions about this list here? Don't forget to use your mic.
Safe movement. I live in Woodside Hills, which is east of 280, and there is a tunnel under 280. It was originally for bicycles and for people and for animals to get through. And it would allow people to actually walk to town from our neighborhoods and allow children and horses to get through under 280 to Central Woodside. So it would be a way to connect all of Woodside if that was improved. It's not, oh, I'm sorry. It's not in the best of condition right now. So I don't think a child would walk through there or even a horse would get through there. But it would be something that could join the entire town because there are a number of residents that live east of 280. We probably have, what, 350 How many homes are east of 280 Sage? I know Woodside Hills were,
It's about 40% of the population.
so 40% of the population. So it wasn't really included in the town center, but that might be a thought as to make sure that all the people of Woodside, including the people east of 280, could get to town, could ride their bike to town and not have to be on the highway to get to town center. So I don't know if you've considered that, but it would be something to address the needs of 40% of the residents of Woodside.
Thanks, Sue. We can, maybe we can add that when we get into the list of ideas. We can put that on in the latter half of the meeting.
I wanted to ask a question about the kind of targeting of folks that we got input from, and it may not skew the survey at all. I just want to ask though. So in the detailed data, I saw a lot of response from districts, the districts that are centered around town center. In the survey, we saw all of the events were held in town center. So kind of question is, do you feel good that we got adequate input from folks on the east side, folks up in Skylonda area, further people who live further away? Do you feel like is there any skew in the data because so much stuff was here? I mean, there are two schools, right, in Woodside High and Woodside School, and we did 2 events at Woodside School. So can you just give us confidence that you feel good about the representative sample?
Sure. Yeah, it's a good question. As one of the survey kind of demographic questions, we asked folks to identify the district that they lived in. And we didn't have any district, I think, less than around 11 or 12% of results. So we did have, a representation from every district, at least of some proportion. I'm not sure that we would expect to see an exactly equal sort of 20-20-20 split. So I guess I would have been more concerned if we had seen a few percentage points from one district or so, but we didn't see that. We did see pretty across the board participation. But I think that comment's well taken. Perhaps for the next round of engagement, we could consider an event that's a little bit farther outside of the town center. That could be a pop-up on the east side, for instance.
Okay, and then just second, I think the list is excellent. It aligns with what I've heard from lots and lots of meetings with residents. The only thing I would add is that folks think Woodside's not very dog friendly, and that I don't know if that came up, but that I didn't see the word dog in anything so far as TCAP, and that's come up from lots of people. Could we please be more dog friendly?
Thanks.
And I'll just add that as far as notification, we did make sure that we did town-wide mailers for the different events. So I think the workshop actually probably attracted more people from outside the town center.
Well, okay. Yeah. Well, that's a good example, isn't it? But the last few speakers are speaking down there and, I'm not hearing it as well, and maybe you are or aren't. But I have pretty good hearing and ask my children. But no, I think it would be better if we use the mic.
Yeah, thanks, Leanne. Make sure everyone's holding the mic, has to be pretty close to you for us to all hear you. Sue?
I just wanted to agree with Richard, especially on item 2 and 3, that we do prioritize residents over visitors, and that we do add the equestrian in the information, as that makes our community totally unique.
Thanks, Sue. Any other thoughts on this list?
One comment that I did not make earlier, several points down, talking about safe movement. I'm not sure we benefit by adding the words in the parents, roughly in that order. I don't know that you need to prioritize. They're all important. The priority is sort of implied by the list itself, but I don't think you want to order safe movement. You want to prioritize all safe movement. So I think the slide benefits by taking that out.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I'm on circulation committee along with Dan, and we've never ordered it. And I don't think we should, because I think each little situation will have its own prioritization. And this is the first time I've ever seen an ordering of those things. So I would also advocate to remove the roughly in that order.
Great, thanks. All right, going once, going twice. All right, we'll now move on to public comment.
For those online, if you'd like to speak, please use the raise hand feature. And for those in the room, you're welcome to come up to the mic.
Good evening. I did want to comment on Measure J. Before I do, I just wanted to thank Richard for your comments. I thought you were spot on. Paul Gold, by the way, Cinnabar Road, speaking in my capacity as a private citizen, hopefully. I did want to comment on Measure J because there's been a lot of what I consider to be misinformation about it. It's been used as a cudgel to limit the town from doing anything in this area. And tonight, respectfully, to the town attorney and planning director, I don't think it's quite accurate. I'll just give you my own comment about it. And that is what you heard was that it essentially limits to one story parcels that front Woodside Road. You heard that a couple of times tonight. It's actually not what Measure J says. Measure J says it's limiting to those parcels that are zoned CC, which is community commercial. There's about 13 or 14 of them, I think. I forgot the exact number. Ironically, half of those parcels are already 2 stories. Those parcels include the Pioneer, Cardinal across the street, Roberts Market, and the post office complex. They're all over 2 stories and they're all zone CC. The reason I bring this up is because what I heard at the last, I attended your last meeting, and what I've heard as a private citizen sitting here is that these are limitations, and they clearly are limitations. But what I heard with the direction of the town to this committee was essentially to go for it. This is a vision committee, and the town wants you to don't be limited by these things. You shouldn't limit yourself. And if I heard correctly, and I'm certainly willing to be corrected, if the town council accepts your vision, it's up to them, your elected officials, to make these changes to make sure your vision is realized. So I just don't, I mean, I can well imagine that as this conversation continues over the next year and a half roughly, that Measure J is going to come up a lot. No, gosh, we can't do that. Actually, I think you can do that, at least in my own personal opinion. And again, it doesn't apply to parcels that front Woodside Road. It applies to parcels zoned CC. That's absolutely 100% accurate. As I said, there's 13 of them. Half of them are already 2 stories. I only bring this up. I agree with all of the objectives that have been made tonight and that you've heard. So this doesn't really apply to high-rise housing and that sort of thing. But I can well imagine some commercial things and some community things that might have 2 stories. By the way, Village Hill is not Zone CC, just so you're aware of that. My point is that we need to be accurate about this because, as I said, this has been a cudgel to be used to prevent us from doing anything on these properties. So we need to be accurate. It is available. It can be changed. But you need to use your vision and then allow your elected officials, whoever they may be, to make sure that your vision is realized. Thank you.
I'm Jim Caldwell. I live on Fox Hollow, just past the school. I notice on slide 14, roundabouts were used, roundabouts plural, and I don't see anything else in your study about traffic. And clearly, it's a terrible thing to have a state highway going through your rural town. This is a problem that we've had forever. And, and I don't see it addressed here. And I'm surprised that people haven't complained about it because, there are times when, traffic backs up all the way to Fox Hollow Road, at certain times of day. And there are various ways that this could be, alleviated that I don't feel have been addressed by your, questionnaires.
You're so right.
There are no raised hands online. If anyone else in the room would like to make a comment, please feel free to come on up to the mic. Looks like we have no takers.
All right, then we'll take a short hiatus. Let's reassemble in about 10 minutes, so feel free to grab a bite to eat. All right. All right, I hope everyone got a bite to eat. Welcome back. And just quick reminder again, before we really get rolling, really just reiterate that it's important that you speak clearly and loudly into the mic so that everyone at home and everyone here can hear everything that's being said. We don't want to miss anything. So great. So we're gonna really, this is it. This is the meat of our meeting. We're gonna jump right into it. So what we're going to start with is basically a series of ideas. The ideas that we heard from this body before, ideas that we heard through the engagement. We're going to work through a series of topics. We're going to talk through ideas, and we're going to take some votes. So next slide. We've got 4 topics for the meeting tonight. For each of these topics, a member of our team will kind of walk through the ideas that we heard, to give us some context and to get the conversation started. We'll then moderate kind of an open-ended discussion about these ideas, looking for your opinions, your pushback, your expertise, your questions. We've already heard some feedback via email from you folks beforehand. I'm sure we've missed some ideas, so we'd be happy to hear more ideas, so that the whole group and the audience can really benefit from your thoughts. Then we'll conclude each topical section with kind of an interactive live polling exercise that will help us really focus the comments from the CAC into concrete results and to give everyone an equal opportunity to weigh in. And we'll have additional discussion in between our polling questions as appropriate. And so just to kind of set the stage as to what we're going to do with this feedback, we're going to be sharing out what we hear from this body with the city council the next time we meet with them. We'll be sharing, agreement from the group, disagreement from the group, mixed reactions from the group. We'll share any new ideas that we hear. Just kind of reminder that tonight is not the night that this body is going to, make all of the decisions about the area plan, but we really hope that tonight will help us inform our team's ongoing efforts and analysis and the next round of engagement that we're going to be holding with the public, the council, and other relevant agencies. So with that in mind, next slide. As we go through each of these topics, we've got a few kind of guiding questions to help prompt our discussion, kind of which ideas are important to share with the community, which ideas do you think our team should kind of look into further, which ideas are more important or higher priority, and then are there any ideas or options that we missed as part of our presentation tonight. And again, we'll go through the discussion and then we'll have a live voting exercise. So with that, I'll hand it off to Kevin Gardner to take us through the public gathering spaces and urban design topic.
Hello, everybody. I'll stand for this just so I can see everybody as we have the conversation. I'm Kevin Gardner with Good City Company, and our first topic is the public gathering spaces and urban design. Next, please. So we've heard a lot of things from the CAC in our last meeting couple months ago, then also through all of our different engagements. So these are different ideas that we've heard through the process. It's kind of a mashup of everything we've heard. And we want to get your opinions on prioritization, things that we want to bring to the public, things that you would like us to look into in more detail for feasibility, things like that. So we'll go through, there's 3 slides of some different ideas, and then we'll have a discussion about those ideas. The first topic here, when we're talking about new public gathering spaces, and before the break, we talked about maybe this is 1 or 2 small gathering spaces. Let's kind of think about what would work for the town center. We have heard from members here as well as members of the public that there's interest in some kind of place to gather, whether it's well, let's look at how about repurposing the triangular island at Kenyatta Road and Woodside Road. That was something that we heard. Right now it's a landscape triangle, but maybe that could become a little, mini town square kind of thing, something like that. Another idea, maybe a picnic area, seating area on Village Hill. Right now there's a trail through Village Hill, and then there's the artwork, but maybe there's some additional amenities that would allow some gathering. Or we kind of touched on this in the last conversation, adding a gazebo in the open space between the town hall and the museum. That was something that was thought about in Measure A. So would that be something to pursue further? Next, please. And then there's other ideas that are maybe less place specific, but of interest. So what are some other ways that the town could enhance public gathering and socializing? We've heard about the outdoor dining and seating with private businesses. So that's something, should that be streamlined and encouraged further? What about a farmer's market next to the town hall? And to the points that we've heard, yes, that would require an amendment to Measure J. That should not inhibit that idea. If that's something that people are interested in, let's just kind of work through that. We've also heard some people, particularly I would say in the pop-ups and the workshops, suggesting a community center. And that could take any number of forms, but basically a place where you could gather, be with your neighbors, do different kinds of activities like that. Next, please. And then urban design. What are some physical improvements we could be thinking about to enhance the town center? Maybe that's enhancing some landscaping in the medians or in the open spaces, or maybe there's some kind of gateway treatment as you come into the town center, maybe at either Whiskey Hill or at Kenyatta. Right here, we're just showing a crosswalk, but it could be any number of things that would signal that you're arriving in the town center. So next, please. So these are our discussion prompts, and we're kind of mixing them all together, but to give you a sense of what the logic is behind. Some of these are, which of these ideas or other ideas that you may have do you think are really important to share with the community in our next round of feedback? Things that we really want to vet with the community. What are some ideas that maybe are interesting but should maybe be studied a little further with our consulting team? And our consulting team includes everybody here, as well as we do have an economics and a transportation consultant as well. So if there's some kind of more technical things you want us to look at, let us know that. And are there particular ideas that really jump out that would be a top priority? Is there something that just really kind of captures your imagination and really deserves to be really promoted or encouraged above all else? Last but not least, is there anything else that we've missed? So again, these ideas are things that we've heard through the engagement process, but it's not an exhaustive list, and we're sure that you have others as well. So what we'll do here, first we'll have a conversation and just kind of hear from different people's opinions and speak to these. And then we will get into the polling, which we'll describe next. But first we'll have the conversation, and then the polling allows you to kind of, vote in real time, and then we can see what everybody else is thinking as well. So with that, what are some ideas that jump out that look interesting, things that you think we should share with the community? Is there anything you saw here that you don't like? We can have that conversation as well.
you for the presentation.
Certainly.
It's hard to think about these 4 different areas in isolation, in my opinion, because one may inform the other. Thinking about community gathering spaces would be difficult without parking and safety considerations. So I think that's something for us to think about as we go through the discussion. In terms of the what ideas could be shared with the community for feedback, it seems like anything that would be affected by residents voting on something like a change to Measure J, anything that, like, if there is a potential need to take things to a vote, I think that planting the seed now and kind of getting some early feedback would be helpful. So whether it's the farmer's market and that shift, kind of understanding, is there an appetite for that? And then maybe an appetite to change Measure J in the future. Or if we're thinking about some of the proposals for the site-specific changes by Roberts and the Hill and here in the public space by Town Hall, I think really thinking about parking and access is so important to those. So those might take, in my opinion, a little bit more work with transportation or logistics to really think about what the impact of those would be, how many people would be possibly using them, because in my opinion, the one by Roberts would probably get more visitorship just based on being at a hub at an intersection. And what does that mean for the traffic, for the community, for the safety? Is that a greening of the entire part between the Triangle and Roberts and eliminating that, vehicular access? Is it, so it's hard to think about these in isolation. But that would be one thing in terms of traffic and economic impact to think about.
Great, thank you. Other ideas, suggestions? Yes, Vanessa.
So I have a number of thoughts, and I'm going to try and keep it very succinct. But one concern we were discussing during the break is that there are so many aspects to this that to get through this in just this meeting and then only have 2 more meetings is disconcerting. To be able to make any real change, I would hate to have all of the effort and the expense of this committee and of your organization go through this and then have what happened, what we heard about last time, that there was just a beautification of the median over on 280, and that was the end of that. So I really would like to see something meaningful coming out of this whole production. With that, I want to bring up 2 things. So I do agree that safety and traffic, definitely parking precludes all of these other things. And one thing that hasn't been discussed, I live further down Woodside Road, so it's a little bit off of the map, but many people know the little store recently opened back up, which has precipitated a lot more walking, a lot more pedestrians coming from the school to the little store. The traffic, the parking has been not just a concern, but a safety of people that are having to cross Woodside Road to get to the little store, the kids that are walking from the school. So to that, I think that we need to have some serious discussions around that area of Woodside Road. And just as one example, and I talked to owners of the little store, talked to my neighbors on Martin Lane. Mr. Caldwell represented earlier tonight, Fox Hollow. So there are a number of, I think, good ideas that people have of how to mediate these problems that are just kind of being exacerbated by the little store opening, and the entire community, myself included, want to support that business because it is a way for community and people to connect. So one idea is, for example, to extend the multi-purpose walking path past the tennis courts all the way down to Kings Mountain Road, and maybe enhance both sides of the road with that type of a path. So, and install another crosswalk, possibly with a red light that goes off for pedestrians to walk. So these are just some of the things that have come up, and I would love to have more discussion around. Again, concerned about our time constraints with the agenda for tonight and moving forward over the next 2 meetings that we have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And we will have more discussion. You are right that there's overlap between all of these topics. We'll get more to the transportation in a separate section, but you're right, there's a lot of overlap. So certainly feel welcome to bring up things as they come to you.
That was going to be my question. Sorry. Are you ready?
Let's go. I saw Ashran.
Assad.
Sorry, thank
All
you.
good.
Yeah, with his mic first, and then we'll go to Steve.
I'll have a quick response. Vanessa, I'm on the circulation committee. The thing you're talking about is actually one of the topics we're working on. I think kind of to the comment that Paul Gold made, I don't think we need to figure out the nuts and bolts of these things and the parking and the access and the egress. We have to give the vision of what we want. And then the town, committees, the council will figure out how to get it done if it can be done. So I think if we tell what we want, yeah, we want people to sit here. Let's say that, and then the town will figure out how to achieve it. And so, for example, the things you're talking about are topics we have talked about in circulation and things we want to implement. And we meet monthly, so the amount of time to go figure it out is far more than we have here. We'd love your support input on that. So I think we should say what we want, and then relevant people will hopefully try to make it happen. So anyways, I agree with your comments, and we'll try to make it happen.
And that's a good point. You know, as we look at our discussion prompts, you know, number 2 is, are there things that we should dive into deeper as the consulting team? So for example, the triangle question, what are we looking at exactly? Maybe we bring you back some different options. We can do a little more analysis, go a little deeper. So we want to kind of prioritize. There's lots of great ideas. We want to kind of think about which ones to focus on. Stephen, yeah.
Yeah, in with regard to community gathering spaces, I presume we'll have, okay, sorry about that. With regard to community gathering spaces, and I presume I'll talk about circulation and parking in another subject, but I think it would really be good for the town to have kind of a character defining plaza kind of somewhere near the Woodside Kenyatta Road intersection. Not as a place that people would drive to do things, but where people meet while they're going to the store, and it makes it easier to walk in the town center. So I'm all for that. I think outdoor dining has worked really well, and we should encourage that again. Farmers market would be great if there were a place for that, and gateways in so much as there's some notification when you're driving into town that you should slow down. I don't think we should have some fancy gateway, but I think it should be clear you're coming into a town center and this is a pedestrian place, not a speedway.
Thank you. Yes. Sue.
On the, add the picnic area on Village Hill, I didn't realize there was a path. I would think, how do you get there? When I drive into town, it seems like such a tall hill to me, and I've rarely enjoyed the horse statues. I wish they were down more in town center because they're beautiful. And as far as the farmer's market, I love farmer's market and organic vegetables. We had a farmer's market here at the school, was it 10 years or more ago? I don't know if anyone remembers that. I would frequent that. However, there didn't seem to be enough town or visitor participation that we didn't have enough vendors. So I ended up going back to Palo Alto because I couldn't find what I was looking for there. But so if I'd love a farmer's market if we could get more vendor participation. Thank you.
Great. Yes, Don.
Yeah, a couple of things. So there was a comment made earlier about overlap between topics. This one in particular, I think, has a dependency that has to be solved prior to enabling some of these things. And the example is, in order to have a meeting place, you have to have means of getting there, which includes solving parking problem, walkability problem. So I think that maybe it's the sequencing of the topics that also has to be addressed.
That's a good point.
I'll echo, actually, I think Steve just had a really good idea, which was the concept of a plaza. So move beyond just smaller meeting areas and think broader around where does the town come together. I think that's a really interesting idea. I strongly second that one getting added to the list.
Great. Let's see, I saw Lyle and then we'll go to Leanne.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just following up on the opening remarks tonight and also these comments about a desire for a gathering space or a community center. On the south side of Woodside Road, between the fire station and the school, there are 2 residential lots that compared to everything else in town are relatively undeveloped. One of those is currently owned by the fire district. Thinking outside the box, those would be perfect locations to put in either a community hall, a park with picnic benches and a playground. If people thought parking was so important, we could have additional parking. We could put housing in there. We need to think outside the box and other locations beyond what we think of as the traditional, town center area right now.
Great. And I think that's exactly what the comments were, that think of the boundary, propose different boundaries as it comes up and it makes sense. And, the boundary that's been drawn for the purpose of the study, that we want to hear from the CAC on whether that's the right boundary or not. Let's see, Leanne had one and then we'll go to Carly after that.
Our family, we own 4 buildings downtown. And I have always, from day one, made a point to ask people, what the heck do we need in this town? There's a huge, long list. But I did find a doctor. I haven't got the dentist yet. Somebody's coming with Pilates and workout, which I desperately need myself. I have the attorney. I have the ambulance. I have the private post office, different from the government one. We have a restaurant. And I have a few more spaces, but I've turned away so many people because I always try to find, what does the town need? It's not about my needs, what I like. It's about what everybody needs the most. So it seems to me that it would be on our back or anybody else who is here to try to communicate with the people that own the property that could do something that you think is really great in the town. And that's all I have to say. I just wanted to make it clear. I've been here 53 years, and when we built that down there and we tore everything down to build there, it was an old gas station that was, a lot of stuff we had to do there to clean up the badness that was in the ground. So it's been a real journey the whole time we've been here, building, building, building. I'm a plumber's daughter and granddaughter and niece, so I love all that stuff. Anything that's plumbing, just give me don't call me though for your toilets. I've done that too much. But anyway, so that's my story, is that I think that people should try to find the people that own things. Christine has a great restaurant. I mean, the restaurants are there, and Christine has property that have things that we need in the town. And her store, of course. So that's what we've done as far as us, but we need the people to say what they think they need. Some of this stuff here, I look at it and I think, how are you going to do all this? I'm not a downer about stuff, but try to just get the things that people really want the most as far as their daily needs and so on. That's why I have the doctor coming. So.
That's great. Thank you for all of that. Let's go with one more. I saw Carly had your hand up, and then this will not be the last time we discuss all of this. So there's more topics, and we'll, this is kind of our first run. So don't feel like if there's more to say, there won't be another opportunity. That said, Carly, yes.
Piggybacking off of what people have said about having public gathering spaces, I work at the school, and yes, the lot near the fire department looks vacant, but also the lot next to the tennis court. After the gentleman in the audience mentioned think outside the box, looking at that property, it's a lot of space. And if and when it's ever for sale, whether the town or the school purchases it, it could be turned into a park, a town community center, a gathering space, and less limited to square footage.
Great, thank you. I know there's more people that want to talk, but also recognizing the overlap between topics, we're going to keep moving forward, and my guess is whatever you might have on your mind now is going to also fit into another topic. What we want to do next is go to who has used Menti before in a meeting. A couple. So this is kind of new for everybody. So this is kind of fun. It's a way to, so yes, so already I see phones going out. So there's two different ways you can do this. You can use the QR code. So if you have a phone, does anybody here not have a phone or a device? We do have some arrangements made for those who want to do it a different way. If anybody needs that, you can also go to menti.com and enter that code. And we'll give everybody a little bit of time to get themselves set up.
Just a quick clarification. This event or this activity is for the CAC only. So please, members of the public, I know you're eager to join, but for right now, just please watch and let the CAC vote. The public will be doing similar activities. We'll be having the online survey, which will replicate a lot of these questions. We'll have pop-ups, so you'll get your turn. But for tonight, we just want to hear from the CAC and start there. So just to clarify.
Thank you. Yeah. Is everybody in? Does anybody need assistance? We can move to the first question. Which is, rank the following potential public gathering spaces in the issue of priority. So this is almost like a kind of brain teaser in a way. But you're taking all of these. We've talked about outdoor dining, farmer's market, public space adjacent to Roberts Market, a gazebo between the town hall and the museum, a picnic area on Village Hill, community center, and then other public event space or entertainment venue. And now what you're going to see as people start entering their priorities, you're going to see it all kind of coming up in real time on the screen.
So you tap them in the order that you'd like to rank them, and then you can use the arrows to go up and down.
Yep.
If you have a problem, just raise your hand.
Yeah.
We'll help you out.
We realize this is new to almost everybody here, so we are here for technical assistance.
Absolutely disagree and don't want, say, the picnic area on Vintage Hill. Can I not tap it?
Yeah, you can just leave it off.
So would you let us all know that if there
Sure.
are some things?
Oh, okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you don't have to rank anything you don't want to. You can just
Yes, thank
rank
you.
the ones you want to rank.
That was the question. If there's something you don't like, just
don't pick it.
Don't pick it. It'll show up at the bottom.
You could just rank one item or all the items. Yeah, no limits.
You need the code back? Oh, no. Does anybody need the code back? We do have a printout
we
of a
can
code.
bring the code
so
to you. You can also,
we
it's at the
bring the
top of your
code to you.
page here.
Hit it. Second time's the charm.
It does take, there's a learning curve. So thank you for bearing with us. So now what we're seeing, outdoor dining seems to be really important to people, community center, and we're kind of going in this order. Another public event space. So this is kind of consistent with what the conversation we've been having here. Down to farmers market, we're getting a little bit of movement at the bottom here. Gazebo is a little further down, picnic area, not as much support. And then finally, a public space adjacent to Roberts Market is at the bottom of the list for the CAC here. So this is useful and interesting.
Is that number of participants at the bottom?
What's that?
Is that 13 have submitted out of 24?
13 out of 24, I believe that's correct, yes.
Why are there 24?
You
don't have 24 members.
Yeah, so hopefully if anybody had started this and is not a CAC member, we do respectfully ask that you not participate in this exercise. There will be other opportunities with the community outreach coming down. Next question. Yes.
Yeah, the results, we'll publish the results as part of the summary that'll be available.
All right, so next, what urban design programs or treatments should the town prioritize? And then the different choices we have here: landscape enhancements, new street trees. Let me, gateway entrance treatments. Wayfinding signage or other. So other would be, and we would encourage if anyone puts other that they share what your other thoughts would be. There you go. Yep. Yeah, certainly this is voluntary. This is a way to, given the number of people we have here, to let everybody at least have a chance to weigh in on things. And so it looks like we have a lot of support for the landscaping enhancements. New street trees, that's something interesting. We could dive into that further, maybe as part of the streets and the transportation section. There is some interest in some gateway entrance treatments, a little less on wayfinding signage, and a little less on other. Is there anybody who wants to speak to other, just in terms of any ideas that were up here that you thought was really important, but we haven't heard from? Yes, Richard. You've got a couple of others. At least a few of you had others, so yeah.
What I was thinking when I said other, I was thinking Western or equestrian theme cues, public art.
Okay.
Things that are going to bring people together. So not in addition to this.
That's great. Richard.
So in the comments from the pop-ups and other meetings, we heard about tree care, landscaping improvements centered around Dry Creek. So my concept would be to simply start in on Dry Creek and within the confines of what's allowed by the state, chip away at improvements, whether that's removing one or more eucalyptus or the like, or simply cleaning up and improving the horse trail or some other improvement. So
great. Any other ideas?
My other was, as I mentioned before, multi-use walking trails along Woodside Road. And also, the traffic. I'm a little confused about the choices that we were given here. So I think that, if we are going to do something like a roundabout, or if we're going to do anything to slow down traffic, that would come before planting trees, for instance, so.
Good point. So yeah, definitely hold that thought. We will get to roundabouts and other things coming up. One last, Steve, and then we'll move on.
I guess it's just been said. I think circulation has to be an urban design component. You can't talk about the trees unless you have a circulation design, and this slide's kind of out of order.
Good point. I think, yeah, perhaps in retrospect, circulation would have been the place to start. Anyways, we'll get to circulation real soon, like next.
So you have a
Yes.
whole slide treatment dealing with mobility, transportation. My idea. Oh, sorry.
I think it's off.
green.
There you go.
So my idea would be to reverse these two, put number 2 first and put this item second. If you present this to the town council and study session, I actually think public safety, dealing with transportation, mobility, pedestrians, equestrians, that's actually, I think, the number 1 priority here.
Thank you. That makes sense. Do we have any more questions on the mentee, or do we go to the next? All right. Is there anything missing? Okay, so maybe we've already covered this. List of potential public gathering spaces and urban design treatments. So now this is something you will type in an idea. Now we have heard, but if you want to just basically repeat it, and then this is going to record all of the words that are typed in, and then you start to see if people have the same ideas that you do. It's all going to show up here.
Wanted to mention that land near the fire station. We
Yep.
would put it there, the fire station property.
I think we'll
that'd be
understand that,
perfect.
yeah. And then like Dry Creek improvement, you can type that in.
You can do them as separate. You can submit each idea separately. So don't, yeah, perfect.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, if you see, wait for the presenter, try refreshing your,
There we go.
all right, we'll get there. You can give as many ideas as you like here. There's no limit.
So this is great. So yes, library is planning to add a community gathering area, sidewalk circulation. We've heard about, okay, community center between the school and the fire station, circulation. So, and as you can see on our next slide is circulation. So maybe give another 10, 15 seconds on this, but this is really helpful. And I think this also start to get used to using the Menti as well. So as we do more of these exercises for the next 3 topics, but it's a way to just get some additional input from this group. So thank you, everybody. We are going to now move to transportation circulation. Was there anything else? And I will hand it off to Ryan Call from Urban Field Studio.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Well, I want to congratulate all of you for figuring all that out. That's really impressive. All right, so transportation, mobility, and streetscapes. This was, well, this is a passionate topic of my own because these are the spaces that we all share every day in different modes, whether it's on foot, in the car, on the horse, or on bike. And so these moments are really important to how you experience your city and how you enjoy your city. So we're going to talk about 5 areas. That doesn't mean there aren't more areas to talk about, but we're going to focus on 5 tonight in the following slides. We're going to talk about kind of the bookends of the town, which are Woodside Road as it travels east, Woodside Road as it travels west. We'll talk about the 2 really key intersections at Kenyatta and Woodside and at Whiskey Hill and Woodside. And we'll talk about the connector piece between those two intersections. So we'll start with the connector. So the central segment of Woodside Road, we heard a lot of conversations about this in our outreach, and it is one of the really unique aspects of your city to have the pull-in parking 90 degrees to the highway itself. It is also asymmetrical with the Village Hill on one side and the Main Street shops on the other. And there's a lot going on, and we understand that people travel this road at a pretty intense speed until they hit the primary intersection of Kenyatta and Woodside. Next slide. So there are a lot of opinions about how this road should be experienced. You know, one extreme is we like it. Leave it the way it is. Don't change the parking. Don't change the lane configurations. And so that's really option one. And these come with different trade-offs in terms of your experience as a driver or your experience as a pedestrian. And there's some interesting challenges as a pedestrian with the lack of continuous sidewalks as you traverse from one section to the other, which leads to option two, which is let's make some really minor improvements to improve the sidewalk connectivity from Whiskey Hill all the way down the Kenyatta Road and make sure that it's safe for people of all ages and all levels of mobility to get from one end to the other. Option three, and there are actually a lot more options than what you're seeing here. There were lots of ideas about how the parking access could be improved or what that experience is and how it affects the lane configuration. One idea was to create a frontage road where essentially you have a chance to pull into a zone where you can angle park, you can back out without ever engaging the highway traffic that's going back and forth. So Berkeley, downtown Berkeley did this a long time ago. It works fairly well in that setting, but it helps people take a little bit more time getting in and out of the parking stall. You're fortunate that the Woodside Road right-of-way, partly because it is a highway, has a lot of width. So there's a lot of real estate to work with there. Of course, that requires the Caltrans coordination. But I think tonight, as Ishan said, we want to figure out what the vision is that works best for your city. And then we'll tackle the nuts and bolts and see what the trade-offs and impacts are. So option four is to look at a full Main Street transformation. And that really is to create an environment where you have parallel parking, proper street trees, street lighting, and somewhat of a more formalized Main Street experience along that stretch of road. And that would also look at what your lane widths are and the sidewalk width and the bike width and things like that all together. Next slide. The next topic that we want to tackle and get your comment on is the intersection of Whiskey Hill and Woodside Road. So this is for folks that are traveling west. This is the main approach to town. You see the Pioneer Hotel as you come up over the hill. And right now it is, there's a lot of asphalt there, and it's been designed for, you know, somewhat higher speed movements in the car. It is it is a difficult intersection to cross as a pedestrian. It also doesn't slow people down as they enter town. Next slide. So some of the options is we leave it alone, it's okay. A slightly minor option is to improve the crosswalks and flashers and create some activated beacons so that folks know when people are crossing that street, especially at night. Option three, install a three-way stop sign and pedestrian crosswalk. And we understand that the identity of this is a one-stop town would be impacted by this idea. But it was something that was talked about a lot as a means to help slow people down and get them to be able to cross and traverse the street. Option four is something that we're seeing a lot more these days, and there's enough real estate in terms of the land there, is installing a mini roundabout. You know, something that would allow cars to access Whiskey Hill, to stay on Woodside Road, but in a way that really pinches it and slows them down before they keep going, but without stopping. All right, next slide. So the next topic, Woodside Road in Kenyatta. This is a really crucial intersection. You do have your stop sign there. It is the source of a lot of congestion at times. There's some issues in terms of being able to pull out of the Roberts parking that's right in front. There's just a lot going on at this intersection. Next slide. So option one is it's okay. We've lived with it. We can continue to live with it. Option two is having a minor design change where we start to tighten up the distances, perhaps remove the most dangerous parking spot at Roberts, and then yeah, So and then looking at some of the slip lane traffic movements and how they push the sidewalks apart. And then option three is looking at a comprehensive redesign where we experiment or play with the idea of realigning Mountain Home Road, redesigning the parking access to Roberts Market, and rethinking the triangle and the slip lanes. So the slip lane coming from Kenyatta and the slip lane coming from Mountain Home Road. And then option four is looking at installing a very mini roundabout that would incorporate some of the options, concepts from options 2 and 3. And this is where the nuts and bolts thing is really important. Roundabout design is challenging, but they have really expanded the tools we have to work with recently. In the last 10 years, they've come a long ways. And our group Alta is working on, or will work on, studies to make sure that it's feasible and that it's safe. Next slide. Sure. Absolutely. So the question was, do the roundabouts actually facilitate pedestrian movements? And they do. And that's an essential spot, is they work in a way where the visibility of the pedestrian is actually enhanced and the crossing distance for the pedestrians are reduced. So in many cities, the roundabouts are actually a tool to improve pedestrian connectivity across an intersection. So the next thing that we'll be talking about is the Woodside Road west of Town Center that goes all the way down to the little store. And what is the right mix? What are the right trade-offs? We have somewhat limited space there, but what is the right mix of different transportation types on that road and how should they be supported? Next slide. And then Woodside Road, oh yeah. Okay, so here, sorry, matching north side multi-use path, and then looking at, do we want to study the idea of a buffered bicycle lane, something that has a little bit of separation between traffic movement and the bikes themselves. Another idea is to explore adding on-street parking near the little store. Okay, next slide. And then also another important connector is the Woodside Road east of Town Center to I-280. And looking at, how we balance this is where traffic speeds are quite a bit higher. What is the appropriate bike lane environment there? Do we need to look at pedestrian connectivity, et cetera? Next slide. So do we look at a symmetrical multi-use path? And I think some of these improvements have been explored on the other side of I-280. And then, or do we look at an asymmetrical improvement where you have a buffered bicycle lane on one side and a multi-use path on the other side, thinking about how to make both of those sections, both of those mobilities work along that road. Next slide. So which ideas do you think, this is similar? Again, these are discussion prompts to just kind of get as much of your thinking out on the table. Which of these do you think should be shared with the community for feedback? Which ideas, policies, or improvements do you think should be analyzed or tested deeper by the consultant team? Which idea, policies, or improvements do you believe should be prioritized? And then are there any ideas or options that we've missed? Richard?
Slide 33 is a strong no. It will not work. It's been tried. It resulted in part in years of litigation between multiple parties in the town. It was a key part of the parking assessment district, which burdened the town with significant debts, resulted in the town manager resigning, a key town council member leaving town, another key council member subject to litigation threat. What a mess. Years and years of public hearings. You're asking private property owners to give up private parking spaces in return for public unregulated spaces. This town is not Berkeley.
Yep.
It's not even close to it, but it's already been tried and it's failed. And it's a total non-starter. Most of the owners are not here. It's just Leanne and myself representing that strip. It's a no-go. We lose significant parking spaces at Millstone. We're left with significant undeveloped property that can't be used for anything between the building and that strip of now public parking. It's a great idea in theory, but it will not work here, and I'm strongly opposed to it. And I counsel the town not to give it further consideration. I counsel you to remove that slide. It's a no starter. There are enough people still around who remember that time period. So
Great.
33.
Yeah, actually just, Ariana, do you mind going back to 33? I think it's this one here. 36. Great. Barry?
I have a couple of things.
Sure.
The first one is on roundabouts, and maybe I'm the only one, but you're asking about what needs to go back to the consulting group to do further. I don't know if that applies to that or not, but I don't know enough about them. I mean, I'm thinking one of the biggest issues that we've been hearing is safety, right? And we have 4 types of users,
Yeah.
right? Traffic, we have vehicles, bicycles, pedestrians, and equestrians. And my visions of roundabouts are that they can work great to provide nice traffic flow in some areas. But you guys have done a lot of other cities and towns around. I got to believe there are places that roundabouts just flat out don't work from a public safety perspective. Now, I could be convinced otherwise if I can see that evidence, but I don't know that. To me, to think about a roundabout where traffic is constantly moving at the 4 corners sounds like an absolute nightmare for somebody on a horse or somebody walking or kids going to school. You said there are advancements regarding visibility of pedestrians and so forth, but it's really hard for me to support something like that when I've never seen that and I don't know what those are.
So it sounds like the really important thing for us to do is to demonstrate what those could possibly look like and how they could possibly.
Well, for me, it would be an education process.
Exactly.
Right? Because
yeah.
Otherwise, there's
And
no way I'm going to support something like that.
I suspect, Barry, that you're not the only one that feels that way for sure, because roundabouts, they've been around for a long time and some have been more successful and less successful. So definitely, I think we're definitely going to need a visual and kind of an educational walkthrough on whether or not it's the right fit or not, because maybe it's not, but maybe it is, but we can't do it straight from our imagination for sure. Yeah.
That's exactly it. And I had one other thing.
Oh,
okay,
sure.
While I've got the floor. The other slide on, not the slide I'm looking at, it's the part between Whiskey Hill and 280. Okay. And I see there are a couple of ideas about making improvements and so forth. I drive that section a lot, and maybe we need to get back to the community. One of the questions was, do we need to go back to the community and ask? I'd like to ask, who rides a horse on that segment? Who walks on that segment? So I don't see people doing that. I certainly am not going to do that. So before voting for improvements there, I mean, are they even really needed? That's something that I think before I could even pass judgment on that, I'd like to see community members from all over. Do you want something here, or do we just leave it the way it is? I don't know that today, but I know what my experience and my vision tells me all the times I travel.
Thank you. Actually, we'll do Lyle and then we'll Caroline.
Yeah, just to follow up on your comments, looking this afternoon at the California Highway Design Manual, Caltrans wants to see a inscribed circle diameter of between 105 feet and 150 feet for a single lane roundabout. And the minor axis of the Kenyatta Corners intersection is only 75 feet. So unless we're willing to do a lot of eminent domain stuff, it seems like that's not going to work.
Thank you, Lyle. Yeah, we'll have Alta look into that for sure. Caroline, and then we'll go to Carly. Thank you.
Yeah, so on the slide that was mentioned, slide 33 in the packet and 36 on the deck tonight, I just wanted to speak to the frontage road option, and I understand the legal complications and the precedents. I've seen this type of frontage road work really well and not so well along Coast Village Road in Montecito. And there's a lot of really popular restaurants and shops and businesses that really necessitate that slower frontage road, as opposed to like the thoroughfare of people going from one end to the other without stopping to shop or dine. And so I wonder, like, in this stretch that we're talking about, like, are there enough destinations to really make that necessary with a number of realtors and, offices that doesn't really have that same feeling where you would have in and out access and frequent visitation that's kind of turning over a lot, like you would see in Montecito, for instance. The other, I guess, downside, so I like that frontage road, but a downside is that sometimes people use that as a cut through and will just use the frontage road as a thoroughfare to get from one end of Coast Village Road to another when traffic is backed up between the 101 exits. So it's just something to think about there.
Thank you. Yeah. Carly and then Steve. Okay. Go ahead.
I've grown up in Woodside and I've been driving through the intersection at Kenyatta, Woodside Road by Roberts for probably gone through it a million times. In my personal opinion, I think a roundabout would be a terrible idea. It's already very difficult with the stop signs, and I know it gets backed up. I know we're in a rush and we want to go, but I feel like it would cause more safety hazards for pedestrians, children walking to school, people on bikes, and horse riders. But I do want to mention that for the gravel pathway going from Roberts to school, I think that if it continued going down towards the little store on both sides, it would create a lot more safety for pedestrians, and then also improving the bike lane on the fire station side, because it gets very narrow and the bikers get very upset with the cars being so close to the pathway and their very small bike path, but also lowering the speed limit near school. A lot of towns are doing that now to like 15 miles per hour, and actually putting up like a school zone sign before school in both directions. There is no school zone sign, and adding a protected bike lane, like the little pillars, because people, when there's traffic at school in the mornings, they cut through the bike lane and kids are on bikes. Yeah.
Steve, I think you were next, and then we'll do Sue, and then I want to get over here.
I guess my question was on the slide 33, 36, the central Woodside road segment. All solutions seem to be focused on the south side, but Village Hill, which is kind of up for grabs, it seems like I think that should be studied, whether parking, paths, bike paths, something. Slow speed calming measures could be explored on the north side as well. I think the south side, as Richard stated, it may be, some possibilities may be exhausted.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Sue?
Well, Pat and I own a historical building in downtown Woodside, so I'd hate to see the roundabout interfere with that. It's been a Woodside landmark for many years. And also on page 35, with the Whiskey Hill and Woodside Road, option 3, I think that's, sounds like good intentions, but I think you're going to have unintended consequences with really traffic backing up way down Woodside Road to Woodside High School. So just wanted to say thank you.
Dan, did I see you? Or
So just a little ditty, because Barry, you brought up the access from the east side. So a matter came before circulation in the last month to add a pedestrian pathway on Woodside Road from Woodside High almost all the way to 280. And we had support from all 3 of the big HOAs in East Woodside. So it's almost 40% of the town's residents are really want to see safe routes from all the way from Woodside High all the way to town center, for biking and for pedestrian. And they've been very, very clear that they want to be able to get to town center. I love Sue's idea earlier about another route through the tunnel under 280 coming like up through the Glens would be great. But we had really high support from that whole community and help us have a safe way we can get across town. Second comment is Caltrans reached out 2 weeks ago, maybe now, and with a plan to work on those 2 intersections. And I think we successfully slowed them down to where they're going to actually come present at least at circulation. Okay. But they were prepared to remove some of your parking spots and on their own. And we said, don't do that. Come in front of, so the residents can have some feedback on both the Whiskey Hill and in front of your shop. So
that could be really good timing.
Yeah. So hopefully, so that should be like January or February circulation.
Great. Thank you. Vanessa? And then Richard will go to you.
Thanks. I just want to second what Carly said. I agree with all the comments. She had the pathway from the elementary school all the way to Kings Mountain on both sides of the road. I think are really important, especially now with the little stores I had mentioned earlier. So I just wanted to second that motion.
Great, Richard.
And I want to third that. So I think Steve Lubin's email talked about this concept of expanding the town center boundary to the west of the ingress to the school. And I actually think that entry point to the school should be on an equal priority with these other 2 intersections. The other 2 intersections are very important, but I think there are further improvements or tweaks or modifications, whether it's signage or speed limits or pathways, that could be looked at and improved upon. And in a certain sense, it builds on what came out of the only positive to come out of that 2013 set of meetings, which was safe routes to schools. So I think you could kind of reword the slide deck so it orients equally to the 3 and mention specifically safe routes to school, and you'd have a winner. Those 3 intersections are in need of something. So
building on that precedent. Yeah.
I just want one additional comment is that from the school, so if the traffic that's traveling west on Woodside Road, there's lots of signage, 25 miles an hour up until you pass the tennis courts. And then there's not a 25-mile-per-hour sign to be seen. And cars, I mean, we walk there every day, my husband and I with our dog. And cars are going 40, 50, 60 miles an hour up to towards Kings Mountain. Once they pass the school, they just speed up. So I think that that's slowing traffic along with all of these things. And as he said, maybe that's a circulation issue for that committee, but just wanted to mention that.
Thank you. Steve?
I think I wrote about the western part of Woodside Road, and I think both that proposal and the one for the eastern part present asymmetrical bike lanes, which is really a bad idea because you're getting kids riding the wrong way in a protected bike lane. It's really dangerous. People aren't looking for that way. They're going against traffic. And that's kind of the problem with existing path that I mentioned in my letter. I won't go through that. But And then as far as the central part and the parking, there used to be parking against, there was parallel parking against Village Hill that the town outlawed years ago when the pub opened that way. People were walking across the road and the council saw fit to outlaw it. So there's like 20 parking spaces just sitting there over there. I think there might be a possibility of actually having back in diagonal parking on both sides of the road. And if you had crosswalks and trees, people would be going slow, so that would be safe, and the back end would make it so people could drive out with that and see the oncoming traffic. It would take a while for people to get used to it, but I think there's a lot of pavement there that could provide a lot of parking without increasing paving. I think that I was involved in designing the frontage road way back when, and I've come over the years to think that's really a bad idea because it really encourages the main highway to be a thoroughfare.
Yeah.
And the parking actually will slow people down.
So in summary, it's to really mitigate the speed, which would then open up the pedestrian safety and open up the possibility to park the north side of Woodside along the Village Hill Park, essentially. Okay, thank you. Any other comments till we move to the next slide? Go ahead, Richard.
One final quick comment, and that is in light of my email that I sent and that Julie put out as a desk item. I wonder if the town might consider closing off the current connection between Gilbert Center and Millstone's property. That was closed off for quite a long time period, many decades. The town obligated the Gilberts to remove that when Gilbert Center was improved. But it's only one car width. It's not wide enough to take two cars. Closing it off would eliminate a, skip through, way of avoiding Woodside Road. So it might contribute to adding to the burden to Woodside Road. But right now, as a cut through, it's at times dangerous. So what that would do is take pedestrians who might now travel along the walkways on the north side of those buildings on the south side of Woodside Road and move them to the back, more to the back. And that drive lane, instead of becoming a full throughway, becomes a walkway, becomes a pedestrian-oriented, horse-oriented, because there's a horse trail right there at the edge of that cut through. If Leanne would approve it, we would certainly approve it. No, I mean the barrier that's, that was removed.
I don't understand all that you're saying right now because you said a big mouthful.
Okay.
Like you always do. But I just
Leanne,
don't want to
could
do that.
you lean
I
in?
don't want to just take this as a nonchalant thing. That's a big deal behind our buildings there, your buildings and ours too. So, and we got horses and we have kids and we had two people drive into the dirt, which was the horse trail. But I by no means do I want the horse trail changed at all.
And then just to summarize what I think Richard was saying, maybe in less words, is no through traffic on the backside. So eliminate, yeah, but no vehicular through traffic. So
On the parking.
that would allow the cut through from Whiskey Hill to Mountain Home.
Mm.
It says, I mean, that the vehicular aspect of it is what Richard's referring to.
One thing I haven't heard at all, and maybe other people have noticed it, when you come out of the back of the Pioneer, if you do, I won't tell if you were there. But anyway, when you come out, there's that coming down from the road up above. What is that road? Whiskey. Thanks. That's terrible. I mean, it's pretty dangerous. People just fly down. It's very this way. So I don't know if that's involved in been addressed anywhere here. It has been? Where?
No, I'm just saying that I'm acknowledging.
Well, you're
what
going
you're
like
saying.
this.
Yeah.
So
Well, I understand which road you're talking about. We took it tonight, and
Oh.
it is definitely a steep
Yeah.
into the parking area.
It's crazy because
So-
there's no sight distance because our whole garbage area is there. So when people drive out, they dump off the garbage from the place. But then they just go and you can't see who's zooming down there.
Yeah, the visibility all in that intersection is quite challenging. Even before that, where Woodside and Whiskey Hill are, there's a lot going on. You're going up a hill, there's other folks coming up a hill from Whiskey Road, and you kind of come together. There's
That
just a lot
needs to
going
be
on.
cut off because nobody should be coming down with no sight distance. That's crazy.
Okay, any other, Don?
Lots of interesting ideas. I'm curious whether you feel experienced or equipped to evaluate any of these ideas as they might impact the perception of a rural downtown or rural town center versus an urban town center.
Yeah, it's interesting. It depends on really where I think you've experienced rural towns in your life. And, rural towns in older parts of the US that go back to the 1800s, some of those had somewhat formalized grids, and, it just depends. They were flat cities in parts of the Midwest. So it was a little easier to pull all those things together. Uh, the rural parts in and around this area, like when you look at, they all take a different shape and form. And so I think when we're talking about the rural character, that definition can mean a lot of different things to folks, but kind of how you have it right now is kind of, I think, what defines rural. And so as part of this town center effort, we're kind of testing what that line is between, can we make the pedestrian bike vehicular experience better? And how does that change your perception of the existing character and how it's modified from that rural?
I was just thinking about it from the perspective of, Steve's frontage road. Is that contributing to the perception that it's a rural town center? Or parallel parking versus angled parking? How does that impact that perception?
It's interesting when we looked at your aerials from the 1930s or 40s that are incredibly on Google Earth, that looked pretty rural. And when you look at the highway that blows through your city today and the amount of asphalt between the gas station and your shops, I don't know outside of the Woodside community if that would fit the definition of rural. So it really depends on the user itself. And I think, again, it's testing that balance to, and tilting, like, if we make changes, what does that undo? And what impacts come along with that? What are the trade-offs with those ideas? And then, part of that is the impact on change in the character.
In terms of character, I mean, I guess, if we're thinking about housing, which I would like to think
Can you
about.
get a little
Oh,
closer
sorry.
to your mic?
In terms of character, if we're thinking about housing, which I'd like to think about, I think it's possible that we could kind of encourage a compact town center in a rural area. So there was there were definitely limits to the dense area, but there was a walkable area that wasn't, walking across parking lots everywhere. That was more intense, but it really was like a small town in a rural area. And I kind of think that's something I'd like to see us working for.
Great, thank you. Sue, and then I think we'll move on after that.
Having experienced roundabouts driving in Europe, I agree that I think it's going to be tough for pedestrians and equestrians because you're coming into a roundabout not planning on stopping. I mean, you're yielding, but you're still moving. So you would have to offset the pathways for the horses. But even then, people are knowing that they can continue to move. I think it isn't really part of a rural atmosphere. And I had one more thing, but I just forgot what it was.
Well, let me ask a quick question on that. So there are two areas, two intersections, and would we look at those differently? At Whiskey Hill, you currently don't have a stop sign. So people are traveling, and so that description that you just described exists without the roundabout, where traffic flows through coming from the freeway into the town. And so would you look at improvements to that intersection a certain way? And then would you look at improve? So I think as we think about the word roundabout, we should think about it in how those two intersections work today, and then gauge, you know, they're really two different places, and just think about how that might change. Yeah. Go ahead, Carly.
Are speed humps allowed on the highway?
Troy.
That's a good question. We can discuss that with Caltrans. I would suspect no, unless we sort of more significantly change the character, in which case it might be more open. But then I think that's a great thing we could look into further with our transportation folks in Caltrans.
I'll jump in and say, I think we have to remember, because it's a state highway, Caltrans has to worry about trucks and 18-wheelers and fire trucks. And so, and even residents, like, do residents want to drive over it every day? Probably not. I think it would slow cars down, but then residents might get frustrated. So, but slowing traffic down is the goal.
And we were reminded, speaking on that note, we were reminded in our public outreach that it's also horse trailers. They're going through town. So we don't want to make their life difficult. Any other last comments before we go to the next slide? Okay, go ahead, Steve.
One real quick one to kind of piggyback on what Leanne and Richard talked about. And it's the access. It's actually kind of the Salt Box Derby Hill that goes into the back of the Pioneer. But if that were cut off when the study would say a three-way stop is at Whiskey Hill, and I don't think a roundabout's a good idea there. I mean, my goal when I see a roundabout is to see how fast you can get through. I've never looked both ways to see if a pedestrian was a key element, but that might be just where I drive. But I'm thinking if we cut off the access from Whiskey Hill down into the Pioneer, that would cut out the cut through that Richard's talking about preventing. So
behind Gilbert's,
yeah, and then he'd cut off my cut through too. So I don't know.
Go ahead,
I
Leanne.
just want to make one thing clear.
Use-
The hill that I'm
use the
talking
mic.
about, short hill that comes down that is so dangerous when you're coming onto the back of the Pioneer. For that, when the kids are doing that, so that that's too bad. We're going to open it for that because it should be. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we can't, because there'll be adults there watching it. You know, I presume. No, that's too much fun. Yeah.
Okay, let's do the next slide.
All right, it's time for another Menti. We can handle it.
All right, so now that you're all pros at Menti, you can give this one a shot. We only have, what, was it 6 more Mentis after this? Oh, just kidding. Just kidding. All right. So which set of improvements would you favor at the Kenyatta Road, Mountain Home, Woodside intersection?
Which set of improvements?
So this is the intersection close to Kenyatta Corners. So no change, minor improvements, comprehensive redesign, roundabout.
No change.
Everybody, any IT difficulty? Are you, it's going smoother this time, Dan?
Succeeded this time.
Good. Has everybody got a chance to make it work? We'll give folks just a couple more minutes. You can give me a thumbs up if you've had your chance to input. Okay, good. Great. Lyle, Sue, you guys got it? Great. Okay, good. All right. So comprehensive redesign, minor improvement adjustments. So it sounds like we have a lot to talk about in our next meeting. So we'll look at both. Yeah.
Sounds like you're going to really have to talk us into a roundabout.
Yeah, well, and that's really helpful feedback. You know, it's an idea, but there's lots of ideas that we can look at. Which set of improvements would you favor at the Whiskey Hill intersection of Woodside? Oh, yeah.
Just vote on one, just one.
Yeah, this is just a multiple choice.
Is there, how do these get registered? Does this only register first votes? Or? No, register all. Oh, so if we.
I wonder if I held it up like this, you might be able to get better light on it.
Don't want it, don't vote. Don't.
That changes my.
Oh, touch your thumb on it so it
Don't-
focuses on the, there you go. Okay, now you got
There
it.
we go.
Okay. Great.
Excuse me. Can I ask a
Yeah.
question? You said that, or somebody mentioned that adding a stop sign or a roundabout would make traffic back up more than it does all the way to Woodside High School. Do consecutive stop signs in a row actually have that effect where the first stop sign impacts the traffic flow worse than the second one?
I think what we can look at when we'll have Alta study some different options here is we'll ask them to talk about total travel time and how that is impacted. If you've left the freeway, you're coming into town, how long does it take to get from one side to the other? And does whatever the 3 or 4 ideas that we study for the intersection of Whiskey Hill and Woodside, how do those either lengthen or decrease the travel time for both cars, bikes, or pedestrians?
Actually, I'm not sure we would think of a increased travel time as a disadvantage. Might encourage people to use other routes.
Yeah, and I think it would inform preferences potentially from both perspectives. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, Sue.
Is there a possibility of a stoplight there and at Kenyatta, the Kenyatta corner? Jim Caldwell mentioned that he had some ideas, and I think people have talked about stoplights, but at the Whiskey Hill, is there such a thing as a green light continuous on Woodside Road, but as a car comes up Whiskey Hill, that it might then stop for that one car? Because that is a tough turn, left turn. But we haven't talked about stoplights. I know they're not.
We'll add that. We're coming up on the additional comments. That's great, Sue. Yeah, we can definitely talk about stoplights.
One of the reasons I really like a three-way stop there is that it slows people down coming into town, which kind of prepares you for a lot of parking that I would envision on Woodside Road.
Great. Thanks, Steve. All right, let's go to the next one. So what is the transportation mode priority on East Woodside Road?
So for this one, you kind of drag your slider from 1 to 5 on how important you think each of these are. You could say they're all important, they're all 5s, or you could kind of say some are more important than others. So you just drag your little slider from 1 to 5.
So yeah, this is from, on East Woodside is basically from the Whiskey Hill going towards the freeway.
To 280, up to 280. Yeah, Whiskey Hill to 280.
Okay, how do folks feel about, have they been able to get the results they want on their, any questions before? Great. Okay, so cars, bikes and pedestrians, and then horses as the lowest. Great. Let's go to the next slide. Same question, well, with a few modifications, but this is basically looking at West Woodside Road. So starting from the intersection of Kenyatta, working all the way down to
Little store.
Little Store. So we'll just give it a couple more minutes and then, yeah. Great. Okay, I think everybody, we've got everybody. So elementary students, pedestrians, highest priority. Then we have followed by a pretty close split between cars and bikes. Well, with horses, very close. So, but yeah, it's a limited roadway and we'll have to make some trade-offs with that. So this is very helpful. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, so if we have a limited budget to focus our resources on mobility improvements, which do you think are the most important? So we have Kenyatta Road, then Mountain Home Woodside intersection. We have the Whiskey Hill intersection at Woodside. The central segment in front of the main row of shops there. Woodside Road east of Town Center, or Woodside Road west of Town Center. So those 5 areas that we discussed, which do you think deserves the most focus, or prioritize the ones that you see highest?
So you've got $100, so assign it. West, yes.
West, yeah.
You're spending your $100 amongst these different areas.
Great. Does everybody have their data in, their preferences? We'll wait a couple more minutes. Okay, thumbs up. We're good to go on this one. Great. Oh, just when I said that. All right. Still changing. All right. So Kenyatta Road at the top, the intersection of Kenyatta and Woodside, uh, followed by a tie, really a split between Whiskey Hill Road and Woodside intersection, and Woodside Road west of Town Center, with Woodside east of Town Center and the central segment of Woodside Road following. So, great. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, what did we miss? And this is where you get to type in and they'll pop up on there, which is really a wonderful record for us of your ideas. And just let us know if it's not working. We can basically just similar in that last slide and the other one is like what topics are really important on this, or which ones did we miss? Good, e-bike safety. Can you scroll down? Is that possible? So we can see the new ones? If not, I don't want you to blow up the system. Great. Does everybody, and you're welcome to spam us with as many emails or thoughts that you have, and especially Sage, she loves it. So, but I think that is our last slide for the transportation section. So I will hand this to Troy next.
There no
Thanks, Ryan.
consideration for a school bus, for a bus?
What was that, Leanne? Leanne, you wanted to add a school bus there? Okay, great. We'll take that down. Okay, great. So in a sec, we'll start parking, but just a quick time check. We've gone through 2 of our 4 topics, and you guys have had so many great ideas and questions that I think we had originally thought we might be done by 9, but we're going to propose that we extend a little longer, probably around 10 o'clock, so we can get through these 2 final ideas. We don't want to, since we have a limited number of meetings with you, we want to spend the time to take these final 2 topics. What we are going to suggest is we'll skip the voting on these next 2 topics, and we'll send that out after so folks can take the time at home to do the voting, but we want to talk through the ideas and have a discussion on parking and on land use, unless we have any objections. All right, let's jump into parking. An easy one to be sure. So we heard a lot about parking from this group, from the members of the public. I think everyone will agree that there are times at the town center where it's hard to park. Not all the time and not all the places, but there are certain times, certain places where it can be really hard to find a parking spot. And our online survey backed that up, that the majority of folks thought there were some challenges with parking. So some ideas that the town could change its, its zoning code and its policies to try to make changes to the parking. Some ideas could reduce the minimum parking requirements for things like offices and retail shops that don't necessarily have that high intensity of a parking need. On the flip side, we could reduce the parking requirements for high intensity uses like restaurants. The town could look at its requirements for the size of parking spaces, whether it's a compact, smaller space or a larger, regular size space. The town could also make tweaks to its policies and its standards to incentivize shared parking and coordination amongst different property owners.
So those are some ideas that we've come up with to try to make some changes to the parking in the town center. Next slide. Here's some other programs and projects that the town can support, either for private owners to implement or for the town to implement on the public parking lots. For instance, the town could start parking enforcement on the parking lots right by the town hall here. The town could encourage valet parking on private parking lots. The town could also encourage mobile apps where you can pay for your parking on an app, regardless of who owns the parking. You could then, the owner of that parking space could be compensated for someone using that parking space. We could have parking meters where you have to pay for parking at town hall, either in the parking lots out here, or maybe if there are on-street spaces on Woodside, an idea that we talked about earlier. And you could have those parking meters have exemptions if you have a resident permit or not. So some ideas of how we could maybe loosen up the parking in the town center. Next slide. A shuttle bus, an idea that was tossed around, and we'd be curious to hear what folks think about it. Not necessarily a cheap improvement, but if it's something that we think is worthwhile, could be worth an investment. You could have a circulator that kind of runs throughout the town. Folks could call for it, could pick them up, drop them off downtown. Maybe you want to go out to dinner, but you don't want to park. Or maybe you're older and you want to go to the doctor. You want to ride. Or similarly, we could have a parking lot that's off-site, and you could have a shuttle that drops people to and from that remote parking lot. For instance, if one of those vacant lot by the fire station became a remote parking lot, you could have a shuttle to and from that parking lot. Next slide. So kind of the flip side of that is building more parking spaces. So that could be, constructing more parking spaces, or expanding the Caltrans parking ride, or setting aside parts of the town hall lot for particular types of parkers, or something that we talked about in the transportation section, adding back on-street parking to Woodside Road, either the north side, the south side, or perhaps both sides. Next slide. So those are the ideas. I think there might be other ideas you guys have. I think some of these ideas are going to be maybe a little controversial. I know some of these might stir up some reactions, but we want to hear what you guys think about parking since it's come up a lot. Steve?
I think that actually for the existing uses in town, if we made use of all the existing pavement, we have pretty much enough parking if it were better managed. And I don't know, how we do that. I don't think private parking spaces that are usually vacant are not a good way to manage them. And we should find some way to make it worthwhile for the people who own private parking to share that. And we should make more parking on the existing pavement.
One of the things that bothers me is to see that the parking right now in the main area outside here it's like everybody comes from everywhere and parks here, rides her bikes. And, my big story about watching a man take a bath out of his compartment and had water and he had nothing on. And I looked for 2 minutes and I thought, well, no, it's not worth it. But anyway, so that's a problem because we don't have any control of the parking lot in any way. And certainly I would think that Woodside residents would have some kind of a card or whatever it is to show that they should be here.
Richard?
So I would suggest that it's important to note somewhere in a slide or a diagram that there's a mix of private spots and public spots. Make it really clear to council members and planning commission members in the study session which is which. Second, I think it's really important to mention that private property owners have expended capital, put up risk monies to buy that parking. to buy land that includes the parking, to allow specific uses. And there are others like the Gilberts who put up substantial monies in the form of bond monies that had to be paid off to get parking at Pioneer. And yet the first slide mentions reduced parking for restaurants. Well, the town's already done that. It's done it at the pub. The pub has nearly no parking. The outdoor seating has taken up what little parking there was for the pub. The pub has no truck access, no truck, loading area. But the pub has no parking other than along Woodside Road. Is that fair? Is that equitable that a significant use goes in and is there for a long time period and yet is never obligated to provide its own parking? Maybe when Waymo takes over or Tesla self-drive takes over and the cars can go down to the Caltrans lot, it'll work. But right now, it's solely reliant on private parking. It's solely reliant on encroachment. I think one idea is to take it one step at a time. The public spots are not marked. There's no marking anywhere. There's no signage anywhere. So that puts the burden back on the private property owners to mark their stalls specifically for each tenant and to put up rural, tasteful, well-built, well-designed signage. Could the town do that? I think that's a real good start. Signage directing people coming into town center. Here's where you go for the public spots. Visitor to the pub who's never been to the pub, this is a big event. They come into town center, they know right where to park. It's public parking. The pub can reach out and say, hey, here's the public parking that we have available. I think that's a good first step. There are some really good ideas in those slides, whether it's parking enforcement or meters or resident permits. I mean, there's some other good ideas there, but maybe a first step is just signage. It's pavement marking and it's posted signage. I think that would help. I think there are a fair number of people who use it as a bike drop-off. When I'm here, it's really a tempting spot. You pull up and there are 3 or 4 people and they all pull out the bikes and off they go. So it's ideal. You can park in the shade, take up all those spots, go out for 3 hours and you're done. That's something that really shouldn't be permitted. They should be biking into town, leave their car at home.
Some good ideas. Yeah. So one thing I can share is that our transportation consultant Alta did a survey of the parking lots to see exactly how many folks are doing that kind of thing, parking for bikes. So we'll have more information on that to share with the group next time, because I think that will help inform a better picture of what steps we should take. But thanks, Richard. Do others agree with that, Daniel?
Well, that topic, and Leanne covered it as well, has come up in front of circulation it comes up every quarter, and it's always directed at the Peloton folks, the folks who come in and drop and pick all these spots and drop into way. And the only thing that people have come up with that they think would work was some sort of time-bounded, a time limit, in the public spots, and then you have to have the council say we're going to pay to enforce that, right?
It's a shame.
But I can just say it comes up at least once a quarter in security.
There, a lot of people people that ride bikes all the time, like my best friend over there. That's great. The only problem is that we had a load of people that came in that were on bikes, and they're the ones that spent the time to tear up every, I don't know, what do you call it when you're trying to calm it? We had these little things in the road.
The strips.
They ripped everyone. It took them about 3 weeks, and I didn't notice until a couple are gone here and a couple are gone there, and then I found a group of them laughing. Well, I won't tell you they weren't laughing after I talked to them, but anyway, I don't know why I'm bringing this up, except that if we don't do something to not pamper, but expect that there's going to be some people from out of town that want to park here and ride around here, then we are going to have to do something about. We have some power over that by having a special whatever, and they have to pay for it. I don't know what we do, but I think it's a big problem because the whole damn place is filled with them here from out of town.
Go Ursan, then Steve.
I'll let Stephen go first.
I was just wondering if you mentioned in your list of things is parking apps, if maybe there's some way, we could deal with that kind of parking issue where people could, like cyclists who could well park at Edgewood Road instead of here would be discouraged by having to pay and otherwise we had simple, I don't know. I mean, anyway, an app might be a way to do that. They seem to work quite well.
I think to echo what Richard said, I think a lot of people in town, residents, others, they get confused by what's public and private. And private property, I don't own any of this property, but it's private property. Somebody owns it, just like I own my house. And I'm not going to let somebody just come park in my driveway because they want to. And so I think that's a really important bit, because what people see as, quote, town center is a collection of a bunch of private parcels along with some public parking. And outside of maybe a conditional use permit, which is how you could regulate the parking on a private parcel, it's not just, oh, we want to let people park here and the owners can choose how they want to charge, not charge, use an app, not use, that's up to them, and I'm a big proponent of private property is private property. I think a time limit, a resident permit. We had the recreation committee, the best committee, where's Paul? Had a Cars and Coffee here a few weeks ago. And half the lot was, before the resident participants to get here, a giant group of cyclists had taken over half the town hall lot. And we couldn't use that portion of it for a town sanctioned event on the town hall property, which was just hilarious on so many levels. But I think if you said, hey, it's 1 hour and then there's a meter, or if you have a resident permit, go ahead. Or something, again, where we're catering to residents, not to visitors who unfortunately otherwise don't seem to be benefiting the town. They're not necessarily patronizing businesses. I know that's something Dan always advocates for. So again, I think looking for the local resident uses in some way.
That's great. That's great. Thanks. Carla?
The parking, it travels all the way down to school. The school on the weekends, the parking lots are packed with soccer families who soccer people pay to use the fields, but the cyclists take up tons of parking. So it's not just, it's not just up here, it's wherever there's available parking where they're not going to get ticketed or be told that they can't park there. But if we did turn to using apps or meters, would the sheriffs have the bandwidth to manage that?
Enforcement, right? That's the other part of the picture, Barry.
Just a real quick tag on to what you were saying, Carly. I think we've seen this in the past in other things, not just parking, but if we were to go to a permitted parking thing or a paid thing permitted, these ideas are all good. It's and which are all you guys. We would need to be aware of how extensive that was into the town, not just in the town center, because if you charge people to park on the town hall lots and so forth, they might likely go find the next nearest spot, which could be in the neighborhoods, could be on the equestrian or the hiking trails. So we need to make sure if we're going to do that, that needs to be further applicable than just in the town center.
Right. Yeah. We would, every move has sort of an unintended consequence, right? Potentially. Lyle?
Just to echo what was just said, I think you're absolutely right. And that would apply to the bikers as well. If we chase them out of the parking lots, they're going to be parking on Kenyatta Road or Raymundo or in one of the neighborhoods.
Sheriff. What's the sheriff's job?
Well, there's legal street parking on those streets. So how is the sheriff to differentiate between?
They can park legal on the street. I don't know that they all are legal.
It's already happening at this point. We're on Kenyatta Lane. It's really barely a 2-lane road, and there are big trucks parked there all day.
Oh, God.
Same thing, I live on Godisha. You can't really drive up Godisha without having to wait for someone to come up and down.
Wow.
And people shoot down from Jefferson on Godisha to get to Kenyatta, and it's really becoming dangerous because the side of the road is a drop-off. So we've seen UPS trucks in the ditch, so it's pretty intense parking right now.
Yeah, so we'll need to think about what we do in the town center having an obvious ripple effect, right outside of the town center, right? I think that's goes to our idea and our conversation about boundaries to being part of this.
This is supposed to be a horse town. I've been here 53 years. We should all be on horses.
So, so just put on your radar, the other two areas that have come up in front of circulation related to the same topic are parking at the church, which doesn't have enough parking during services. And if there's no legal place for people to park, it'd be great. I would, it's kind of the opposite discussion. I think we should probably figure out how to make it easier for people there. And then the other one's a little store where it's more controversial, where there are lots of people parking and some parking illegally because there's a draw and there's not a solution. And these things are all coming up in front of circulation, those two additional topics.
Yeah, the idea of potentially marking spaces by the little store. Is that what you're talking about?
People are parking on Woodside Road, not often illegally, and blocking the pathways when that parking lot overflows.
Got it.
Well, I think even more specifically, there are some no parking signs there that aren't necessarily consistent, and then it creates confusion. And then it's like, are you on the road or the dirt? What's legal? So again, it's lack of clarity, I think, that causes many of the issues.
Yeah, that
And
gets
the
back to
and the confusion actually extends to the sheriffs as well. So
it's a good point. It gets back to Richard's point about the clarity of signage and ownership, right? Common theme here. Did I see someone was about to jump in over on this, Carly?
Well, I just know that whenever we have big school functions and there's going to be tons of parking, I always have to submit a permit for our families to use Woodside Road as additional parking because we're allowed to park on Woodside Road when there's school pickup and drop off. But on the weekends, cars are still parked on Woodside Road, but I doubt people are getting tickets.
Great,
Yeah,
thanks.
the sheriffs have told us that they generally only do parking enforcement upon specific complaints. So they don't go looking for it, but if somebody complains, then they'll go issue tickets as needed.
So inconsistent. Okay, any other thoughts? Any other ideas we didn't bring up? Anything we should take off the table at this point? Tired of talking about parking? Okay, well, I heard some good ideas and a fair amount of convergence on a couple ideas. So I think we'll come back with some more information about the usage of the public parking lots, and we'll bring back some of the information we had last time about ownership of the public lots. And so, all right, we'll skip the mentee in the sake of time for tonight, but we'll send this out afterward. You guys can do this at your own leisure. There's some questions about trade-offs between various ideas and then another free response for other ideas we missed. So with that, I'll hand it over to Jane for the hot button topic.
Thank you, Troy. I'm here. I'm the end. We're the last part. So we're talking about land use, commercial, and residential. I'll try to make this brief because I know we're over time. So if we can go to the next slide. We'll start with commercial. And there have been some ideas, especially from our community engagement about various things. And I'm glad, Leanne, you brought it up before. What do people want? This is actually one of our mentee questions that we will skip, but please do put them in. What we did here was things like ice cream and boba shop, fast casual, takeout dining, pharmacy, urgent care, yoga, fitness. Sounds like some of these things are coming. Some teenager spaces, some venue spaces, daycare. These are just some of the things that we heard. So for these, we'd love to hear if you had any more missing businesses that you don't think we heard yet, or you know, anything you'd like to bring up as far as what could fill in. And you know, part of this is also thinking about what the town can do to attract desired businesses. If there's anything the town can do, maybe it's streamlining the approval process for retail and service uses by removing any kind of barriers. Maybe it's a public hearing process or other things, or reducing parking requirements like we were discussing before. But you know, this is all crossover kind of topics as well. But generally, you know, if the town can do something, that's another thing we'd love to hear out of this process, if there's a way to make things easier for businesses to be brought in. All right. And then our favorite topic that we want to end with is residential. And so I wanted to start with just defining some terms. We're going to talk about residential and mixed use. And we're going to talk about a term called adaptive reuse. And so what do we mean by adaptive reuse? We're talking about perhaps there's a possibility of using existing commercial buildings that are zoned and used as commercial buildings, and allowing them to convert into multi-unit residential or mixed use where you have both residential or commercial uses. So whenever that's referred to adaptive reuse, that's what we mean. It would be a change of use from strictly commercial to something that has a mix of uses. And so that mix of uses, usually we mean residential units might go on top and ground floor would be reserved for the commercial, for shops, restaurant services, and offices. So that generally is when we're thinking about mixed use, that's the combination, that's the organization of what would go in the building. Okay, great. So earlier in our evening, we had the town attorney here talk a lot about this policy context. So I won't go over that again, since I think we had a really good discussion about that. But this is when we're talking about engagement. When we're thinking about the policy, we're thinking about residential uses for potential in the town center, other than single family, that are not currently allowed in the town center. So this is sort of opening up the vision for what could be here. As we discussed before, Measure J really limits the height of any buildings fronting Woodside Road, so to no more than 1 story, and then clarification earlier as well for the type of use. So considering whether or not that is a limitation that you want to discuss is another one of the things we'd love to hear about. And then the housing element, of course, really asked the town, an obligated town, to explore potential for housing in the town center. So this is why this topic is here and one of the reasons we're bringing it up. So, and through our engagement, really in meeting 1, there were some of the CSC expressed some interest in talking about the potential housing ideas. So we'd love to stoke that again and really hear about that. And also during our community engagement, we really heard a lot about a lot of different ideas. In fact, it really didn't seem like there was a clear consensus about whether or not the concept of housing in town center it seemed like it was quite split. For some, it was something that was really important. For others, it was definitely not. And then about the character and scale of housing, we know, of course, that it should really fit in. And so what is critical for that if housing is appropriate? And just to break it down a little bit more, we are definitely exploring ideas for both public and private properties. So we'll start with public. And I think we talked a little bit about this before. And of course, we know the measures right now may need to be relooked at. But if residential were to be considered here, or mixed use, would you possibly allow it on public properties? And here, there really aren't that many choices to choose from. Would it ever be appropriate on Village Hill or in the town hall area or parcels or the land around town hall? So this is one idea, but it's absolutely just something we want to test the waters with and see if that's something that even is important to you, or if it's something that isn't really something we should be considering. And so when we're also thinking about, private properties as well. And this is really to allow private property owners to have a little more flexibility than what is currently on the books. And so, right now, it really doesn't allow, option 1 doesn't allow any residential units. But then, we're trying to think of whether or not you would allow or consider adaptive reuse of those commercial buildings to allow some of the residential to go within existing buildings and go within the existing height limits. Another option 3, would be to allow smaller scale, low density, no more than 2 stories fronting Woodside Road, or mixed use. And then option 4 is to allow more medium scale, medium density residential, more like 3 stories fronting Woodside Road for other kinds of residential uses. So this is just spelling out a range, and we'd love to hear what is what your comfort level is with this. So really what it's also about is talking about increasing or the allowable heights or stories of the buildings fronting Woodside Road. And we know that that would require public voter approval. So this is something we want to just see if this is this is something that we should consider. And so these are the same questions you've seen in the last 3, so I won't repeat them, but basically we would like to open it up for discussion of whether or not housing or commercial uses, mixed uses, the rules should be considered as part of our planning for the town center. Yes.
Is this on private property, on public property, on all properties?
It's on all properties, and
So any property. So if an
yes.
owner of property wished to do this,
yes,
would be allowed to.
right.
So
We're talking about if you
the
own property. Yeah.
Property owners the right to develop their land.
Correct.
In this manner.
Yeah. So if you own private property right now, and if you wanted to,
it's more private than public.
Absolutely. So
that would be. That's what you're suggesting, that a private property owner or the town, the little bit of land that we own, could be developed in one of these fashions.
Correct. So it's just trying to consider whether or not this is part of the vision if we were to allow some of these rules to either allow more flexibility on height or.
So zoning would be changed.
Yes, this is definitely a discussion about zoning changes.
Yeah, we're asking about both, Sue. We're asking sort of people's appetite for the public land and then also for the private land. It's sort of
treated fairly in terms of development, the size of building, square footage, things like that. Both they would similar rules would apply to the town-owned land and also the private property.
that's a question for us to discuss. I think we're open to what people think is right or inappropriate.
Okay. All right. I just.
Sure. Thanks.
Sue, and then I'll come over here. And then I'll come to Leanne.
Yes. Hi. If this group is supposed to suggest ideas to the town council about housing, wouldn't it be helpful for us to know what's in store in the future for us as far as the state imposing housing needs on us? Paul might, our town council member, might be able to help us now or later with how many apartments do you think we're going to need in Woodside? How many condominiums? Are they privately owned or will they be apartment buildings? And if so, would they, is it 30? Is it 50? Is it 80? Because I would be open to looking at the Village Hill. I would be open to looking at the town here. I would also be open to looking at the 2 lots on the left or right of the school. Hacienda is a perfect location right downtown. I know that's privately owned, but you could do a beautiful Woodside Village apartments there. So I think we all should have an idea of what are we expecting as far as the input. What are we expected to be looking at? How many people, how many apartments? Thank you.
So if you're asking what was the state's regional housing needs allocation during the last round, that number is, I think, around 390 units was assigned to the town as a whole. And that was, no units were explicitly assigned to the town center. But what was asked was an open-ended question for us to explore if and how do we think it's appropriate in the town center. So we don't need to necessarily be directed by the state in the town center. We should ask ourselves, what do we feel is appropriate from the character and the vibrancy and the land use mix standpoint?
I mean, how many are we expecting in the future, and what is, I've forgotten what that future date is, but so if we're planning now, we should say, well, we know we're going to need 50 more apartments. Where would we put them? If we're going to put them in the town center, where might they go? But is it 1 apartment? Is it 300 apartments? I don't know.
Yeah, so this is a great question, and we definitely can think about it from different ways. One of the ways is what does the market want for demand? And we have an economist for that. But there's a lot of demand, so that's not necessarily our limit. I think our limit here in the town center is really to consider what is the scale and size of buildings rather than how many. But how many comes into it? That's an absolutely important question. We don't quite know, but we know that it should be somewhere. It's probably not 300. It's not 300, but it's somewhere between 0 and 300. So, there's a lot of room for us to think about it. But it's really the big question is what is the scale of this?
Right, and looking at scale, if we said there are 50, well then will 50 fit on this town-owned property? So we need to have an idea of how many would fit where.
Yeah, that's also part of our technical assistance here. When we think about that, we need a little bit of direction from you on how big, what kind of character it is, because then we can kind of get a sense of, oh, you don't mean high rises or apartment buildings, you mean this other type of building. Then we can test it, and then we have an idea of like, oh, how much can fit here. So that is one of our future steps.
Can I just quickly interject? I just want to follow up on Sue Paletti, and then for the record, this is Jason, the town manager. So we don't know, but ultimately we do know Cycle 7 will come. And this is the discussion that really aligned for me was Matt Garr, unfortunately, who's not here, really pointed out that he felt that the Planning Commission was pigeonholed for Cycle 7 over the locations that could be utilized. And so when we talk about public versus private, we're not talking about a project. We're just talking about possibly altering the current laws that then allow somebody to do something. And obviously, if you're talking about the public entity, then we have a lot of flexibility to act, quickly if we decided to act quickly. If you're alleviating rules for a private owner, it doesn't mean anything's going to happen on that site at all. It just means that they have flexibility to their land use in order to utilize that space differently in the future. But you can't we expect internally, and Sage can speak on this, we expect Cycle 7 to come, and we expect there to be an obligation for this town with a group similar to this and the council and the commission to work through these exact issues just like they did on the Cycle 6 housing element, and that there will be an obligation to stand up more housing. We do anticipate that happening.
So you talk about housing, but there's no qualifier. This is not market rate housing. This is very low income housing. What is it exactly?
Actually, we don't need to qualify like that. It's just the shape of the housing at this point. We're not actually talking about low income or market rate. It's just, whether or not you would allow it.
Either one. So I
Yeah.
would suggest that the slides make that clear, or at least you make that clear during the study session, because I think that's important. So I want to go a little bit outside town center and suggest that the town has an opportunity discussed in the housing element together with 21 elements or through 21 elements, this group of public entities, to approach the state, perhaps with other 21 elements throughout the region, regarding the state's property at community colleges. Kenyatta College has ample land in several locations that is drop dead gorgeous for housing. It's well graded, it has improvements, it has access, it has views, it has no competing uses. How are we trying to take a town center that has been built out substantially, quite small in scope and scale, very little open space, and attempting to shoehorn in perhaps substantial, we don't know what the state will obligate various entities to do, but perhaps substantial housing, when there's an opportunity to obligate the state itself to take a harder look at state properties that are sizable, scalable, and together with, perhaps there's a sharing mechanism between the town and other members of 21 Elements, where when the housing breaches a certain level at Kenyatta College, it's shared, those units are shared amongst the 21 elements rather than solely attributable to Woodside. Oh, what a great parcel to put housing on. My gosh, you have public transit, you have parking, you have tons of land, you have use, you have utilities, everything. You've got everything. It's just gorgeous. So
You are, right? Motorcycle sit?
In Cycle 6, it's a designated housing site. Part of it comes to funding with the college, and so that's something that at their other campuses they have already started that process. And I know that at Kenyatta College, it's next on their list to start looking at funding sources.
So my idea would be to privately, through 21 elements, help facilitate state funding of that housing, pushing politely against the state, hey, we're obligated as a town to go through this. Shouldn't you be obligated to go through it at the state level and fund it at the state level on state property? And not just on one campus, but right here where you've got a demonstrated need, ample open space already set aside. I mean, you've got a tremendous amount of open space in the region and just a gorgeous site for housing, high density, low income, very low income, whatever you want, workforce, student, the whole 9 yards.
All right,
It's a
so this
great
is
site.
Just we'll have to look at it town-wide. And so this exercise is really focusing on what type of housing might be appropriate for the town center. So it wouldn't all be at Kenyatta College or all in the town center or all at, Skylonda, but to find different areas in which town that could be accommodate housing.
Okay, I'm gonna go Leanne and then Stephen. Yeah.
Use your mic. Thanks, Leanne.
This makes me feel good though, because my husband says I'm such a loudmouth without this. Yeah. I thought about it because we have a space for that. And when I heard that they were looking maybe for space for people that are like teachers or had certain things with the town, then I was interested in that. And so I really don't care. It would be right along the area where there's the horse trail in the back. So you'd have to like horses. But
Okay.
anyway, but it could fit something there. We built enough that I know that something could go there, and it would be probably a 2-story something just like the rest of the buildings. But it doesn't look like we really have to rush into this to go building everywhere, do we? I know that whoever those people are that haunt us, maybe it'll go away at some point. It's just terrible that you're forced to build things constantly. What kind of country is this?
Stephen.
Yeah, I would agree that, I think housing isn't all going to be supplied. Everything we're required to have is going to be supplied in town center, but I think it's the best place to put it, and we should try to change the rules enough so that it's easy for people to add another story along Woodside Road. I think that would actually improve the small village center feel of the place. It was combined with pedestrian access, and we should also look at areas that are within walking distance of town center and do, and really look at ways to do it. But it should all be incremental. It should be small scale, done by individual owners. They shouldn't be institutional. I think it would be much less disruptive if they happened property owner by property owner. Although I do think there might be some opportunity to put some housing in on the town museum property. I was instrumental in the design of this parking lot, and at the time really wanted to have an open meadow in the middle. And the open meadow's all been planted full of trees, including the one planted in front of our museum sign. And given that it's been kind of enclosed, I think there might be chances to provide some housing in this property, and the additional parking would be necessary to support it.
All right. Any other opinions? Yes.
So in pretty much all of the one-on-ones I had with folks in my district, there was broad support for your slide 52 in this, which is about commercial land use focused on services for local residents, not new retail that's going to draw people from create more parking lots, but stuff focused on local residents that, if I could summarize it, it'd be lots more services where I don't have to drive down the hill to Atherton and Redwood City, things we need here. And so it's great to hear Leanne's thinking about that. I believe people would be in support of changing zoning to allow, I think the key in this is we need to incent the property owners so they're going to make more money. And so their properties are worth more money. And so I believe people would support the idea of a 2-story limit downtown until you put more of that kind of retail stuff on the first floor. And if you want to have venture capital offices and other stuff, and maybe it bridges into housing, but at least, I think people really want a vibrant retail focus where you can have a variety of services focused on local residents in the area. And I'd love to see the property owners incentivized so their property's worth more money to do that.
Great, yes.
Yeah, echoing that, I think, all of these plans and allowances, that's all they are, right? It's change the zoning, allow something. It's not, oh, then tomorrow the bulldozer is going to be digging up and building a home, right? And I think to Dan's point, all these things have to be economically viable, right? That list of businesses that you guys have, person has to say, I'm going to spend my money and time trying to make this happen. It's only going to happen if it works. I doubt the town is in a position to be subsidizing businesses. I don't think we should do that. But I think if we lower the barrier for things by having wider allowances for zoning or other uses, that will enable somebody to do that if they choose to. If they don't, they don't. And that's what we have to live with, right? If nobody ever else builds an ADU and we don't knock down that 300 whatever number, if the town did what it was supposed to, then it did it, right? And that's as far as the town can go. So I think the resistance to some of this, I think, is kind of unfounded because all we're doing is trying to set the rules in a way that we all agree with. And, the worst case of this is, right, the poison pill that the state was always threatening is we're going to come take over your planning department and all you locals can get lost. At least this way, we can have a say in, okay, we want it to look like this. We want it to be designed like this. It's Woodside consistent, but is allowing a property owner to do what they feel is best for their property. But it's not putting a shovel in the ground until somebody goes to do it.
Super good points. It is about planning and not necessarily forcing anyone to do anything. So that's great. Yes.
Actually, building on what Dan was just saying, I think there is an approach to this that might smooth the path to the ultimate decision about housing downtown. And that is that from your survey and pop-ups, residents said, we want more variety in retail and services and hospitality. The problem is we're dealing with a finite amount of land and space. The only way you can achieve that is increased density, which is likely going up. So if you can get buy-in for increased density to satisfy the retail request, that opens the door for the discussion around, well, some of that space could be housing. So I'm just offering that as a path to help make this a little bit smoother.
Good thoughts. Any others? Yes.
I guess my only thought is you have 2 options stated on slide 56 about allowing adaptive reuse. I think that should be explored. I think, and certainly allowing small scale, low density residential, like 2 stories along Woodside Road. So I understand that does take, public voting on it, but I think what we're talking about, and everybody said it just for me, we're talking about the possibility. We aren't talking about doing it. So what we want to do is put forward the possibility that this could happen so that when the next housing element comes along or the next investor wants or property owner wants to come along and do something, they have the possibility to do that. And so I think that's what we're trying to set up here, possibility to have these things happen. So I wouldn't resist, changing, getting people to vote and show them that the possibility is so our hands aren't tied. I think everybody's pretty frustrated by the last housing element. 300 houses in 8 years or nearly 400. I wouldn't think it's going to go down unless the politics change in Sacramento. So in 8 years, the next element, we should be looking at 400, 500. So where are we going to sprinkle those around? So if we don't create some possibilities, everybody's hands are going to be tied once again. So we should, I think those options. I don't know about high rises in the town center.
We were pretty sure you weren't going to go for that. All right. Any other thoughts about land use? Yes, please.
So I don't live in Woodside, but I've worked here most of my life. And parking, and running the shopping center and the market has become increasingly more difficult, to field the bike riders and the popularity of the restaurants, which means more employees. When that shopping center was built and the parking was built, we had a fraction. The grocery store might have had 20 employees. Now we have upwards of 80. I have at least 40 people that come to work every day. And they don't have parking per se. They use the hardware stores parking numbers, right? They have like 5 and we use their other 15 spots. And I have employees that park all over on the highway on Woodside Road, because we don't have enough parking. When I hear conversations about building a lot of housing in Woodside, I hear no one talking about how the town center is going to deal with all of those people. Even if a fraction of those people came down to the center to go to the market, to go eat, to grab a coffee, whatever, we have nowhere to put them. And I am still going through a years long, year 3, battle to get some more parking for the shopping center. And I ended up with a measly amount of parking. And people want outdoor dining, they're going to be sorely disappointed with what we came out with. Sorely. I mean, it's really pathetic. So to talk about housing and a town center, I don't know how you're going to accommodate 390 units if each unit had like a minimum of 2 people. I just don't see it.
You want to use the mic?
Oh, no, damn it.
Sorry, Christine. When I was talking about that, I know I would have a garage there or parking spaces on our same property, not expecting to be on the street.
It's not housing if you build it in town, because I figure most of them would walk to the town center.
Oh, definitely.
It's these 300 units that are out on the outside of town in these different spaces. Well, they're all going to come to town in a car. I mean, some might take a Waymo or something sometimes, but that's a lot of people. It's a lot of extra people.
Haven't we talked about a bus situation here? Of course, that doesn't reach the outskirts. We were just talking about taking us somewhere, but I don't know. It's terrible. I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah, again, here we have the overlapping topics again. It's always about circulation. Good thing we spent most of our time on that earlier. So I think I just want to offer one more time if there are any more comments about land uses. We're going to send out the Menti. There's a couple really good questions there about which businesses to add, your view on housing, and also about your opinions about public land and private properties in housing. So look forward to those. But if there's anything else anyone wants to offer, yes.
I would just echo many of the previous remarks that were supportive of allowing mixed use and adaptive reuse and giving property owners flexibility. And it would seem like, at least among this group, there seems to be a number of people that were advocating having to go to the voters and do some tweaks to the restrictions of Measure J to allow 2 stories. I would just point out that it is interesting that I would think, I mean, Woodside still does not have any apartments. They have nothing other than single-family homes and ADUs at the moment. And even if you had 10 or 15 apartments in the downtown area, those would be quite attractive to people. And as the EIR for the housing element said, 95% of the people that are going to go in this additional housing are going to work outside of town. So they won't be here during the day. And at least in the town center area, it's pretty dead quiet at night from 9 o'clock until like 7 in the morning. And so those locations would be very attractive locations for people to live.
Great, thanks.
It depends on what night it is, Leanne. I mean, sometimes you guys close early if nothing's really going on.
Okay, that sounds good. I'll give it back to Troy.
All right. Thanks, everyone. That was a really interesting conversation. I think a lot of good ideas. I think a lot of openness to broaching some of these ideas with the community and seeing, oh, thanks, Kevin, seeing where these ideas go with the emphasis on the more smaller scale types of housing, adequately parked, et cetera. So with that, oh, yes. Well, we first have public comment. Do we want to do public comment first or minutes first? All right. Why don't we go to public comment and then we'll wrap up after that.
As a reminder for those online, please use the raise hand feature if you'd like to make a comment. And for those in the room, please head on up to the mic.
My comment to you, Christine, is maybe some of your employees could live in those apartments. And think about it. Anyway, I wanted to just talk about a few random things that I had comments for throughout your discussion. The first was Steve and I were the architects for the conversion of the Matheson farmhouse into the museum. So there's your conversion. And we were raising the money publicly, and we got towards the end of the project, and Susan George told us we needed to pay for 4 parking spaces. So at $12,000 a piece, we had to go back out and raise more money. And I said at the time, can we assign these to the museum? And she said, no, you're part of the whole public parking district. I don't think I have ever parked in front of the museum once in how many, what was it, 2003, Steve, that we did that. So we own 4 parking spaces, but I'll put my name, I'll go spray paint my name. And yeah, and then just by way a little bit of history, the triangle is actually called Alec Donald Park, named after Woodside's first road commissioner. And the road just to the south of that, the sign is gone. It's Lowe Road after Bill Lowe, who was the first mayor of Woodside. And as far as all the stuff you were talking about, Leanne, the retail stuff, there used to be a gas station where Mr. Ersted's property is. That's why the building set back, one of 5 gas stations in the town. Then there was a bakery, Hanson's Bakery, was fabulous. Then there was a dentist. Then there was a dress shop. Then there was a Book and Bean, which is coffee and books. Okay. Then there was a deli. So there were all these uses. There was a second grocery store next to the Chevron in that building and a retail gift shop. So I don't know if those businesses went out because they weren't making it. Now it's all banking and real estate. So, you know, we should think about who's going to shop at these places. It's not going to be just residents. They're going to be from out of town. So, yeah. But we've been there before with retail, and yeah. And then my last point is the roundabout. I am vigorously opposed to the roundabout. I don't want to give up that much real estate. I would rather add it to the plaza. I think somebody suggested, or enlarging the triangle. And it was actually Christine's father, George, who was a good friend of mine, who convinced me we should never have a stoplight in Woodside. We used to have great discussions, and one time he said, come. We went and we stood on the corner and we watched the traffic for about 15 minutes, and everybody does a stop. It's a perfunctory stop, a California stop, but everybody stopped. He said, if you had a stoplight, people would run the yellow light, and you've got a horse, a cyclist, a kid. And so I said, well then, George, we should maybe shrink the intersection so people can see each other more closely, but you'd have to take out these 2 spaces on the corner. And he got vehement. He says, you take those away and you give them to me somewhere else and I'll agree to it. So even he opposed the stoplight. So no stoplight. And no roundabout. So anyway, those are my comments. Yeah, we can talk about it more.
There are no raised hands online. Do we have any other speakers in the room?
I always have something to say. I knew this was going to be hard, but I didn't think it would be like solving the Middle East or healthcare. There's a lot here. And it's frustrating sitting there because I have a lot of comments, but I'm going to try to keep them brief because it's late and you guys have done a great job. I did want to comment on something that the town manager had spoken about, and we heard it in here. The whole idea here is to give people the opportunity to do something if they can. They can't now. So if I own Goat Hill over here and I wanted to build a nice retail space with a couple of townhouses overhead, I can't do it. And there's no parking anyway. So the whole idea here is to figure out something where I could do it if I wanted to, because property changes hands, people die, kids take it over. We see that in real time here in Woodside right now. And there's 5 property owners, major property owners in this room right now. Hi. You mean there's not 2 or 3, there's 5 of you in here. And the whole reason that Brian, who left just a few minutes ago as mayor, suggested that we have property owners on this committee was for this very reason. We need your buy-in. We can't make you do, we're not actually trying to make you do anything. We just want you to have the opportunity to do it if you want to. And when property changes hands, things change, everything changes. I did want to mention just a couple of things. And again, I'm going to try to be brief here. There's a big difference. So I'm trying to sort of like brainstorm as well. And like, I've lived in a lot of places where they've changed over time. I grew up in Surfside, not the one in California, in Miami Beach. And that place used to be lots of little motels and restaurants and stuff. Now it's 50-story condominiums, with Trump's name on them and big stuff and everywhere. It's changed. It's the Grand Canyon now, and it's a totally different place than where I grew up. But let's imagine 20 years from now, you come back to Woodside, what's it going to look like? I think it's going to look pretty much like it does now. It's going to, it's going to evolve and change, but no one's looking for 20-story high rises in Woodside or Kenyatta College, by the way, either. We're not looking for that either. We don't control that. Yeah, what you may like, the people who look at it may not like it so much. And we don't control that. That's not our budget. There's a community college foundation that pays for all that stuff. And so we don't control that. But I'll touch briefly on something that came up, and that is, what's the expectation for cycle 7 to come up here? Just a brief statistic, California in its wisdom said, people who have heard me, you'll know these numbers, but they said in this cycle, which is 8 years long, we're going to build 2.4 million homes. That's what we're going to do in California. That's the law. We have to build 2.4 million homes. The math isn't very hard. If you do the division, that's 300,000 a year, every year for 8 straight years. Just to put that in perspective, in our very best years, I'm talking about the 70s, when we were building like crazy, where all these communities, when Los Altos was built and San Carlos was built and everything was kind of going crazy, we almost hit 150,000 one year. 300,000 a year, every year, 8 straight years. We're in year 4. We're about to start year 4, if I'm not mistaken, in cycle 6. So that number is going to go, it's crazy. And we've missed it by we're not going to do, of the 2.4 million, we're not going to do 800,000. We're only going to miss by almost 2 million units out of the 2.4. So it's nuts, but until California changes, we're going to be left with it, and maybe it'll be a bigger number next year. So the whole idea, though, is not to put housing in these remote locations. It's to put them everywhere. Nobody should be exempt. And in this last housing element, we didn't put any in the downtown area, and maybe we should have. Yeah, there's room for it. So here's the stuff that I was thinking we would discuss, and I'm really glad we got to some of the important stuff at the end. Well, it's all important, I know, sorry. But So I wanted to mention a couple of things that I noted. Commercial is very different when it's a doctor's office or a dentist's office or a real estate office or a venture capital firm than a restaurant or an ice cream place or, you know, a coffee shop. There's a different intensity. You know, a doctor's office is different than Robert's Market. I mean, where cars are coming in and going out. So just think for a second here. Do you want, and by the way, I'm 74 years old. I'm not going to be around when this stuff happens. Would you like to see commercial space between roughly Pat's Place and Sue's Place, or, you know, roughly that, you know, Kenyatta Corners, all the way down to right here, Haciendas, on this side? Do you want to see that be commercial? Do you want it the way it is now? It's Village Hill, and you've got the two horses up there that nobody even knows they're there. Nobody even sees them unless there's people in this room who probably don't even know that they're there. Do you want to go? Yeah, here we go. So would you like to see that as maybe 2 stories where there's some commercial on the bottom, an ice cream place, a coffee place, maybe a little restaurant, and maybe some housing for teachers or people who work here in Woodside so they can walk and don't need cars? You don't need 3 or 4 people in these buildings, but something that's over there. So tear down I'm not proposing this. I'm just brainstorming here. Tear down the gas station and the real estate place and the Cardinal Education and whatever else is over there. I don't know. There's, oh, okay, but and you imagine that, and it goes all the way down to Haciendas there, where there's something there, and maybe it is a little side road where, you know, you could have a little. I'm very familiar, by the way. You're talking about Montecito. That's a perfect example where you have a different structure there, where it might be a little bit easier. Do you want that to be commercial? I'm not talking doctor's office. I'm talking about places where people want to go. Also might be perfect safe streets and safe ways to get people from the East Siders over to this side if you had a nice little way to get through there. And so these are big things. I'm not talking about, do we need street signs in front of the school? We absolutely do. But I'm trying to envision, what should this look like? How should everything look as we kind of go through here? What do we want? What does this group want? I'm not wedded to anything. So, and I am going to wrap up here. There's building utilities here. This is a really interesting room and as Dahlia would point out, a very historic room. And this is just a nice location here. It would be a very good general purpose place for the community to use. It's not a great place for meetings, I don't think. And we've got the library. Could the library be formed into something that also was a meeting room? It was in a different location, someplace else. We've got these, we were talking about these great empty lots next to the school, the fire station, Haciendas over here, maybe between here and Robert's Market. There's some places that we could put it. Could you reimagine that there's a building, maybe it's 2 stories, that has a library on the bottom and a meeting room on the next floor where it's set up as a meeting room, not just a big square room with terrible sound and lousy audiovisual facility, something like that. By the way, the library, if I'm not mistaken, has $6 million sitting there waiting for us that we're not spending for capital. We could build a new library if we wanted to. We can move it. We've talked about this in the past, by the way, and moving it to other locations. So this isn't new stuff. Just try to imagine there's other things that we could do. The last thing I wanted to mention was some very specific lots and things. Oh, I'm sorry, I did want to interject something. Sorry, I'm rambling on here, aren't I? Bicycles, big problem. They steal, sorry, Steve, they steal all of our parking spaces and they park there all day long and we can't get it. And they, you know, it's bad enough we need them for employees. Try not to think about ways of limiting them with our sheriff's department or by making them pay or whatever else. They don't care. They're going to park wherever they want to park. Give them a place they want to go to. You ever think of that? Make a beautiful lot for them that's really outfitted for bicycles and people to do it, that's going to be safe, where they could set it, they could fix their bikes and they could assemble there, and it's perfect. The one thing bicyclists have is they don't need to be close to downtown. They're biking all over the creation, so they can actually be pretty far away. There's there's places we could go, but this is something we need the bike community. You're not going to get it by sheriff's enforcement. You're not going to get it by paid parking meters. So, I mean, give them a place they want to go to and they'll go there, I think, and it could be huge. Who knows? There are some very specific lots I did want to mention though, to at least think about. And I hate to throw these hand grenades into the room here at 10 o'clock at night. It is 10 o'clock at night. So there's some really good locations here, and they were mentioned. The lot next to the tennis courts was mentioned, right across from the library, and Haciendas out here, Goat Hill, which is next to it, Village Hill, the gas station. A lot of these places could be reconfigured for something completely different. Some of the things that I'm mentioning right now, they could be very, very different and done differently. I like the idea of the triangle that we were talking about to do there, maybe even closing off that side street. I know that that could be a problem, but without interfering with the horse trail, that'd be a great place for those two horses to go down where people could see them right at the center of town. That'd be a nice little park there with, what's it, Spring and Sprite, I think are their names. Have them come down. I mean, so nobody's going to see them. They'd be the center of attention in town on that beautiful little triangle there. Well, that's why the property owners are in this room, is because they either have to buy in or hear it, and if they don't have to either. Anyway, that's all I had. I'm sorry to ramble on here. I commend you for doing a really good job. This is a bit of a nightmare, and the only thing worse than what you guys are going to come up with is you're going to toss it over to a bunch of elected officials who have no idea how to deal with all this stuff, but they'll figure it out. Anyway, thank you.
All right. Okay, thank you, Paul. We'll be seeing you soon, actually. So just quickly, last slide. Thank you all for your patience and your ideas tonight. Just quickly kind of recap. One of the next steps is our team of professionals is working on some analysis. As I discussed, we've done a survey about bicycle parking behavior. We're working on some economic feasibility analysis related to residential, which speaks to some of the questions about how many units, what's the affordability. So some of that information we'll be able to bring back to this group. We're going to be diagramming and dimensioning some of the improvements we talked about in terms of street widths and possible improvements to the triangle, et cetera. And we're going to be moving towards an actual vision plan with more kind of precise recommendations based on this conversation and other conversations. So that will be part of what we bring back at the next meeting, the CAC meeting 3. In between now and then, we'll be meeting with the council and Paul and others to talk about what we heard tonight, talk about what we heard in the early engagement, and to bounce some of these initial ideas off of them. So with that, we'll look forward to seeing you at the next meeting. Thanks for sticking with us a little later. One more thing, and we need to approve the minutes from meeting 1. Thank you, Julie.
Sorry, we just need 2 more minutes of your time. Does anyone have any changes for the minutes from the August 26, 2025 meeting? Seeing no changes, can I have a motion to approve the minutes as drafted for the? Thank you, Pat. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Dan. Everyone in favor, please say aye. Everyone opposed, say no. And they are approved unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We'll be sending out the Menti questions and a summary of tonight's meeting. Thanks so much.
That's too long to sit still.